one of the things that sometimes you miss going offline. I think a lot of people they don't experience this. They really keep it online, and I think you lose this really valuable experience where sometimes you have to learn how to mitigate some sort of conflict, or you have to hear some advice that you may not want to hear at the time. And it can be really difficult when you're online and you can kind of put yourself in a space where none of that reaches you,
Yeah.
to deal with it when it happens. So, great example. At the boot camp, two different things happened. I remember one was I played Nico and Mr. SNK, and he was not feeling the game very much, but he was trying to play Birdie and trying to enjoy it.
Right.
I was playing Rashid, and I think one time I just kind of like ran over him with some bullshit, and he got really mad, and you could tell he was like "fuck," like, and he was mad, but he looked at me real quick and was like, it's not at you, right? I'm like, oh yeah, it's fine. Like it's all right. It's whatever. So you learn how like some people get mad and they blow off steam, but it's hot air. It's nothing
Yeah.
personal. They're just kind of mad or whatever.
Hello, hello, and welcome to the Absolute Guard podcast.
We're the podcast that chronicles the past and present of the fighting game community, and bring on various perspectives from Arizona. You can find us on Twitch when we go live, which is typically on Thursdays at twitch.tv/Spiral Series, YouTube with the VOD at youtube.com/Spiral Series, and on Apple Podcasts and Spotify under Absolute Guard. To all of you watching and listening, we appreciate all the likes and subscribes, the retweets, and the tweets. This is episode 11. My name is Benny, also known as AK Grandmaster B, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host John, whose Instagram page is 99% his cats, Luna and Stella. How you doing, John?
Pretty good. Yeah, I am a late bloomer with Instagram, and I started doing it at like 2 months ago. And I was like, you know what? I have so many stupid social media accounts, and I don't want to put more of my life out there, so I'm just gonna put all these cat pictures that I take anyway on there, and
Yeah.
it seems to have been a hit so far.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you wanna grow your audience on Instagram, I mean, you
I'm
could
gonna
do
be
a
a
lot
cat
worse than cats.
influencer.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
cats and food blogs, those kind of things. Like you could definitely get an audience like that.
Yep. And it's kind of cool. Like I sometimes like the cats are like a framing thing for new and exciting things in my life. Like we bought a Steam Deck recently, and so I took a picture of the cats with the Steam Deck. So anything new and exciting. But what is new and
Yes.
exciting with you, Benny?
Uh I have to say this past week has kind of been all over the place. Sleep's been all over the place. Work's kind
Yeah.
of been all over the place. But other than that, like I mean, I always try to be in good spirits and be positive. So don't really kind of let things get me down. Just kind of, one foot after the other, keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Stay upbeat. Uh, I did get a what did I get? Oh, the I think I posted about that. But yeah, I got a yoke and the throttle setup for flight sims for free
Ooh,
randomly,
fancy.
which was really freaking cool. So just turns out that the guy that was giving it away, he happened to be from Alaska too. Hence the AK. I saw the AK in his email address, and I was just like, "Hey, does that mean Alaska?" Because like that's what I think of. And he's like, "Yeah, sure enough, it does." And he just went ahead and like sent it to me. I was expecting to pay shipping, and he's just like, "Nah, don't worry about it, man." And I'm like, "What?" So that was
Wow.
pretty cool.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
random acts of kindness like that. He just that's super cool,
yeah.
man.
I mean, I guess that kind of goes with my whole AV history with like random giveaways too. So I mean, I don't know.
You won the raffle.
Yeah, hey, it
That's
it
funny.
happens, man. I don't. It just happens. I don't question it.
Yeah, you pay it forward. You be good to the people around you. And speaking of people who are good to those who are around them, well, we have a guest in our community from our community today who's well known throughout the NRS scene and throughout the global general fighting game community, but Arizona scene, but also the national scene too. Who's our
Yeah.
guest today, Benny?
Yep. Today we're talking to Tanner, aka King Hippo. How you doing today, Tanner?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm always interested to talk AZ history. I think it's a pretty fun scene, so I'm always glad to talk about it. And I've been friends with you guys for a long time, so absolutely, I had no choice but to say yes to come on.
Nice. Yeah, when we started this thing, like, I'm the guest liaison per se, and like when it came to just thinking of like the variety of people in our scene, like you were just somebody that stood out to me too. And it was funny because John was asking me, he's just like, "Hey, we should have Tanner on sometime." And I was just like, I actually scheduled him to come on. I'm like, 3 weeks from now. He's like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I already got it sorted out." Like,
I,
Yeah, just to
no,
give the audience a little bit of high level of your accolades here is you are a top NRS player both locally and nationally for games like Mortal Kombat and Injustice, and we'll go into deeper on that. But you're also one of the stronger fighting game community commentators, or not commentators, but like someone who has like commentary on the social goings on of the scene.
I
think.
exist in the commentariat. I would say yes.
Yeah.
That's the way I put it.
I guess influencer would be the word, but even then.
Oh, don't, for God's sake.
no.
But yeah,
I don't know we go that far, but I mean, yeah, we'll get into it, but yeah, we can talk about how that has that came to be and where it stands now and all this stuff. I'm very interested to talk about it.
And I first met you. When you were playing Street Fighter 4. I think when we just met like randomly at a tournament. I think. Right?
I'm positive I remember the first time, and if I can indulge you because I thought about that.
Okay, I'm curious.
So this is about, I'm gonna say 2011 or maybe late 2010.
Okay.
I was a lurker on the Shoryuken Arizona forum for a long time.
Sure, yeah.
So I could put character mains to names, and then from there, so what I did was, I think it was one night, I remember I was at Arnold's house, Spovedage, local Tekken player. We used to graciously open up his place for people to play all sorts of games, and I went there one night, and I remember I would sit back and I would watch, and I'd watch who was playing casuals, and I'd look at who was playing. So I saw someone was playing Ibuki, and someone was playing Dudley, and I'm like, oh, that's Smoogie and Brainpipe who are in the forum. So I went and introduced myself, and I said, "Hi, are you Smoogie?" And you're like, "Yeah." Like, who are you? And I just had to explain, like, "Oh, I lurk on the forums a lot, and I know you guys play." And you were like, "Oh, that's cool," and whatever. And that was like the first time I remember seeing a lot of you guys. So like Scott, Dana, yourself, Arnold, basically everybody that was, and at the time who was really playing actively was there. So that was the first time I remember meeting. And then occasionally we just run into each other tournaments and all that stuff after that.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember a ton of our first meeting, but I do remember our conversations at tournaments, as if like, because by that point we were already just like talking and conversationally, like we were already buddies. But like, I don't even remember that's crazy to me. Like, and it's hard to be like, hey, I know you from the internet.
I know, yeah. That's what I felt super awkward. Like I didn't know how to, because I sound like a stalker. Like I'm like, I absolutely know you randomly from this forum that I watch all the time.
But on the flip side, I've been in that scenario before too, where it's like, oh, you know me? Am I? And like, I think Saber actually had that same sensation on a previous episode of ours. He said like, yeah, when people recognize you, it's less so of like, who are you, and more like, how do you recognize me?
Why?
Like, am I a big deal or something?
Yeah.
Like,
and he had that viral clip that went, that was like, I think when he was he playing Valle, I think, and it was
he did,
soccer.
yeah.
So I imagine that, also helps a lot. But for me, it was just more like, I remember I thought I burned the bridge on accident. There was, and I don't know if you remember this. This is really funny looking back. So it was during UMVC 3 had like just come out. So it came out, I think, in like maybe November of 2011, if I remember right. It was like the same year that the first game came out. And when Phoenix Wright first came out, he had this gimmick where as when you got him into objection mode, all of his assists became invulnerable. And he had this one where he'd walk forward with the papers and it would wall bounce you. Just this ridiculous assist that was totally invincible. And on the forums, I think it got patched within a couple weeks. It didn't last very long.
They did. I'm so bummed.
And I remember you played Zero and somebody and Phoenix, and your goal was to get Phoenix to be objection mode and then do that assist. And on the forums, I said, well, I don't know how powerful it really was. All I know is there's one local player that used it, and it seemed pretty dumb. And then I got a DM from you that was like, you know what the fuck you're talking about. I can't believe you go off talking about this.
I did? Oh my God.
And then like I got a DM maybe an hour later that was like, dude, I'm so sorry. just salty. I was like, no, dude, just chill.
Okay, I was about to start
Yeah.
apologizing for that too. Wow.
Yeah,
Oh my
no,
gosh.
it was funny
That's
because it was
funny.
like it's
That's
one of those
funny.
things where it was a fresh wound because I think it was like the day of the nerf coming out. So it was like if you were really excited about like playing Phoenix Wright, you just got your hopes and dreams dashed because that was like the one thing he was good at.
That
And
was
now
a
it's like this.
yeah, no, totally. Like he was that was around the time when I was learning how to play top tier, and not like learning how to play the fighting game, but more like learning how to deal with the stigma from top tier and learning how to deal with balance
Sure,
patches
yeah,
and nerfs and stuff when they feel targeted at you and you take them personally and all that other BS.
yeah.
So
And I
that's
think at the
fascinating.
time, yeah, I think at the time too, like the prevailing kind of topic was that like Zero had been hurt really bad because he got changed a lot between the first game and Ultimate, and really he just got like
He
laterally
got
changed to
well,
being
no, he got
amazing.
better. He got
Probably
better. I just
better,
was
yeah,
too dumb to
honestly
notice
better.
it. Yeah, I was too dumb to
Yeah,
notice.
but I think like they changed. I think something about how like his blaster was. They changed it a little bit. I think it used to be like a full on hard knockdown, and they were like, nah.
Yep.
And there's some other stuff that was kind of dumb, but what they really just changed was how stupid like the simple stuff was, and then the other stuff like I think he could cancel his buster into the lightning,
Yep.
which is how he got the lightning loop to begin with.
Right. Right.
And so yeah, it was just a kind of a funny like that's sometimes you talk too much, and I mean I was guilty of that, and we'll get into that as I definitely when I was younger I think I'm very guilty of like I'm kind of outspoken sometimes, and I say things I shouldn't, and I look dumb, and then I just have to be like, yeah, I was being dumb, sorry.
I got to go a little meta here and like because when we talk with so many different guests on the podcast, and a lot of times the questions comes up like, what are we doing this for and who are we doing this for?
What
And
am I fighting for? Yeah.
That too. And I want to say that a lot of this also has to do with like for Jon, I want to it's retrospective on points in my life as a fighting game player, and so like those growth moments that you just mentioned, Tanner, about like when learning how to deal with salt or learning how to deal with the wound being fresh and whatnot, and doing it at a younger age when they were fiery and stuff like that. It's kind of nice to kind of go back and reflect on that in a medium like this.
100%, 100%. I mean, the other thing is like, so like I started out playing Super Street Fighter 4, and I was playing like HD Remix and 4 and Super 4, and then I started playing Marvel, and that's when I jumped into Mortal Kombat. So it's like 2011. So it's like right after Marvel 3 came out, I
Yeah.
was playing Mortal Kombat on the side, but I really got into more of the Mortal Kombat side. And one of the things you have to learn, um, as I eventually was able to unlock like how to be good at that game and be one of the better players, there does come a recognition that you have to understand that when you're one of the better players, sometimes the way you say things and the way you communicate after, especially if you win or something, can like really, you can have the unintended effect of saying something that kind of sounds dickish.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like you have to really, and I wasn't very careful of this for a long time. Sometimes be careful when you have people respect you as a player, but then it's like, okay, also you have this kind of this hidden responsibility of like now your words carry a different meaning. And I think for a long time I would just sideswipe. I'd ignore that. And you grow. You're young and you grow, and that's part of being. I think a sign of a good growth is that you can recognize that hey, maybe I have this responsibility. I didn't realize it before, and now I do, and so I can learn from there.
Yeah. So I mean, speaking of growth and being young, let's kind of take it back here. So your
Must we?
gamer tag, yeah,
Yeah.
your gamer tag, King Hippo. For those that don't know, King Hippo is a character in Mike Tyson's Punch Out in the very original NES. So give us a little bit of origin behind like when that started. Like whether that's something you started or something bestowed upon you, and kind of like what's the origin of that tag for you?
Physical resemblance. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's not that. No, the truth is it's a pretty boring truth. So when I was entering tournaments for the first time, so this would have been like your online Xbox Live ran together tournaments on GameFAQs for Street Fighter HD Remix. You just used the tag that you had in my tag because I got an Xbox I got my own Xbox. I want to say in like 2010, maybe 2009, and it was one of those years that the Punch Out for Wii came out. And I loved it a lot. I played it all the time, and I think that was just on the brain. And I decided, well, I got to pick a name now. And King Hippo, well, King Hippo's taken. King Hippo 42, and there you go. And there's the tag, and that's just stuck for years. I just never thought about changing it. And people laugh when I say it, so it always gets a kind of a reaction. So I just was like, well, I don't need to change this.
Yeah, well, sometimes I mean, John's changed his name. I've
Yeah, he
technically
was
changed my name.
Smoogie, which was
Yep.
Ibuki's spin kick move, and
Yes,
then
it
I think
was.
we affectionately like Muji, affectionately, like that's what it
Yep.
was. And I
Yep.
think now you just go by like Porta John, I think, or John.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah, which is
Yeah.
funny too. I like that.
I got tired of introducing myself as John. So
Yeah. Also, just saying Smoogie, like it's like okay, I got to explain what that means, and I'm just
Yeah.
Yep. What's interesting about KingHippo is that like I didn't know you got it from the Wii version because KingHippo
Yeah.
is like it has the old school street cred from those old school
Yeah.
games too.
Well, I'm
right?
not that
With
old,
Old
so
school
yeah.
Punch
Yeah.
Out. But you almost get that plus your air of maturity and your eloquence also kind of give that you kind of get OG cred somehow. Like I don't know, it's weird.
Well, I think I've learned, as you grow up, that if you can, speak eloquently or try to, and you can kind of make it sound like you're pretty confident in your opinions, people will listen to you and they'll respect you a lot more. So I learned that from years of being a forum warrior and arguing about tier lists and stuff. That as long as you kind of project an aura of, wow, this guy sounds really like he knows what he's talking about, like he's really experienced, they'll believe that you're like, they're like, how are you not from like 1933 or whatever? And it's just like, I don't know. Like, it's just not because like they'll, I have friends that are older than me and they'll talk about like, oh, you remember this NES game? I'm like, no, like when I was born, I was already at Super Nintendo. Like now I've gone back. And so I can do that. But like for the most part, if you just casually reference it, I'm like, no, I don't know what that is.
That's funny.
Remember this movie from the 80s? No. But yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah. It's, I think it said, like I said, if you learn how to project yourself and be confident in your opinions and never let yourself be swayed by like, because I always have this logic, and this goes into my blog later. We'll talk about, but like my philosophy now, after years and years of ironing out, is always like be as most logically consistent as you can be, but also having to be being open to interpreting new truths that you hear and figuring out how that can fit into a worldview and maybe go from there. Like, you don't want to be totally inflexible. You don't want to be totally flexible, but you have to be somewhere at a nice compensatory place where you can take all that information. So like if you think you're right about like your character, I usually would like, don't let people who, they'll just, they don't really know that much. So they'll be like, well, they're probably pretty bad or they're probably broken or something. Just, you know what you know, and just take in what people say and kind of internalize it and figure out the best way. Cause it's not coming from nowhere a lot of times. It may just not be the most informed. So it's like, sometimes you just have to decipher what is true, what isn't true. And that is part of my argumentation style and like how I like to write my blog and how I like to think about, video games and things like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of break it down into pieces. Think about your audience, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's keep going through your origin story here. So when did you get started playing fighting games? You kind of mentioned we talked about it briefly earlier about Super Street Fighter 4, but can we get some dates in there too?
Yeah. So I when I started taking like games seriously, or like I would think about it on a higher level than just, playing it, was definitely, I had the Capcom Classics Collection Volume 2 for Xbox. And if you remember, those have a tutorial by the great David Sirlin, aka David Sirloin.
Yeah.
And they have like a tutorial where he explains like high level, thinking about like controlling space and all this stuff. And then there's wacky like negative edge stuff mixed in that I never internalized. I still don't know how to do it to this day. But the basic stuff I always thought was really interesting, and like how he broke it down. And that's when you find his website, and since he designed HD Remix, of course he's got articles on all that stuff. Saved his cat right there. I saw that.
Yep.
And so it was like you could learn how to like talk about that stuff at a level beyond just I like it. And I thought that was really cool. So obviously I was all in on Street Fighter 4 hype. I was watching the videos from like, there's Togeki videos where they'd have Daigo playing and all this stuff. I was watching all that, and then I played HD Remix when it came out, and I had a controller, a Soul Calibur 4 Mad Catz arcade controller that I had.
Oh, those are good ones.
Yeah, that was not bad. I actually liked it. And then 2009, about February or so, Street Fighter 4 comes out. So of course I'm all in on that. I played it all the time. Right into Super, that came out. I didn't start going to like tournaments and stuff that were like offline. I would say 2010 was when I started. Now I was still in high school, so it was a little tough for me. But
Okay.
I remember I was at Devastation 2010, which was a much smaller event than what was to follow, and we'll probably talk about that. But it was like a more low key affair. But there was still like Mike Ross was there, Gutex, and other people that were like known, so it was pretty cool. And then I think after that, I went to like a few tournaments, but I didn't really I wasn't like a presence or anything. I wasn't any good, so it's like no one would probably recognize me if I was there. And then I
real quick,
started.
one thing I learned about Devastation today from somebody else, and I just kind of wanted to inject it in the podcast for history's sake, is Devastation was one of the first tournaments that was streamed.
Yes, 2010, I believe, was streamed where it had DJ
Wheat, yeah.
DJ Wheat, yeah. And I remember that was the famous where Marn, I think Marn won, if I remember right.
I think so.
That, but that's what I remember anyway. So yeah, it was historically, it's definitely a prominent event.
Yeah,
like that is one to think about.
It was on Justin TV as well, not
Justin
Twitch.
TV.
Justin TV.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because DJ Wheat was a Justin TV guy.
Yep.
Along with like Destiny and a few others that were real big Justin TV advocates, and that became obviously Twitch, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that was definitely a seminal event for that thing. I just remember I was playing casuals a lot, and I was playing Gen at the time, so I kind of got a crash course in how to get your ass kicked, and that was great. There was a local player, I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he was playing Blanca, and it wasn't Louis Scumbag, it was somebody else, but he was playing Blanca, just kicking the shit out of me. But he gave me a lot of friendly advice. He was like, "Yeah, that's cool. You play Gen. You don't see him a lot, and blah blah blah." So that was like a nice introduction to offline's not that scary. As long as you get over the jitters or whatever. And then I would say by 2011, now that I was out of high school, and the other thing that helped a lot was my brother and his friends were really into Marvel 3 and Mortal Kombat. So then I had a way to travel, and it was like an excuse to let's go hang out with my brother and his friends and blah, blah, blah. And we'd go out to the tournaments, went to Devastation, go to local scenes. We had the Ranbats that were at, this is 67th and Peoria, if I remember right. And there was like a little land center there right by the McDonald's.
Oh, they're the ones run by Keith then. Those Ranbats, right?
I think they were Keith. Yeah, I think it was Keith. Yeah,
okay.
If I remember right.
From Euphoria Gaming.
Yeah, it was at that land center, and I was playing Mortal Kombat there, and I would play Marvel 3, and Marvel. I remember that was big. This is a great story. My brother saw an ad for Walmart. A local Walmart was having a Marvel 3 tournament, and the winner got a big TV. So I was like,
what?
Shit. So I was like, yeah, I'll take it, no problem.
Oh wow!
And I rightfully assumed they're like, well, you can't take your arcade controller there, or whatever. So I practiced all night on a 360 controller. I knew all my combos I could hit. I played Chris, Trish, and Wesker at the time. So it was like they were very simple characters. Yeah. So it was like I didn't have any trouble, going to controller. So I went to the tournament. And sure enough, I'm kicking ass. I'm beating all these guys, and it's no problem. And then we get to the finals, and it's a guy who had an arcade stick, and he got told that he couldn't use it. So he was kind of upset. And then the first thing that happens, we sit down on the set. First thing he does is he quits out to the main menu. So it unlocks Akuma, Shenko, Sentinel, and Taskmaster. He picks Sentinel, he picks Magneto, and he picks Storm. And he proceeds to beat the ever-loving piss out of me. I barely touched him. He would just Magneto, and he knew how to do the ROM loops, and he was doing the hypergrav loops and all this shit. The DLC glitch with Sentinel, and I was just, what the fuck is this? I just got destroyed, and I shook his hand, and I was upset. And that little boy who nobody liked turned out to be it was Dan. It was Dan Amitsu. That
was Dan. Okay, I was like,
just and I knew, and as I was talking to people, they're like, oh yeah, and as I knew over the years, I got to know Dan. He's a great guy.
Yeah,
he's really talented at any game. Preternaturally talented, almost like he'll know what's good. He'll be pretty good at it, and anytime you run him a tournament, he's an excellent gatekeeper. And that was sort of my introduction to oh, this is the real shit. Like, this is what you got to prepare for.
Yep.
So then I practiced up, and I rearranged my team. So I was using Chris, Hagar, and Spencer was my anchor.
Okay.
And so I wiped off the tears from my face after I got obliterated by Dan. And I went to a Devastation tournament at a comic book store that was on, I think, 43rd in Glendale. So it's there's a big super Target there.
Yeah.
Right across the bridge there's like a little comic book shop. I don't know if it's still there, but I played there and I was doing pretty good. I beat my brother's friend who was usually better than me, so I was feeling good. Ran up against the Phoenix player of all things. I was like, God, I knew Phoenix was cheap, but I persevered. The first game, I was able to snap her in and kill her.
Nice.
The second game, Phoenix got me. The last game, Phoenix got me, but the clock ran out on Dark Phoenix, so it was Phoenix who's still annoying and Dark Phoenix, but without the X factor, a little less intimidating. Now I was playing Spencer, so I'm zipping around everywhere. I can't get hit, but I'm like, I don't know where I'm running out of time. I don't know what to do. He came down to that dive kick on top of me. I mashed the bionic arm. And it won. And it won.
Nice.
And I was so happy. And that was the first tournament I ever won. And I was super happy. Shook a hands with the guy. He goes, I'm gonna tag you back. And I was like, I'm sure you will, because I got pretty lucky. And that was Angelic or Armando.
Oh, really? He was playing Phoenix?
He was playing Phoenix, yeah. It didn't last very long after that, but there was no Shuma yet. It was Dante, Dormammu, and Phoenix, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like the first tournament I remember, and then from there I just started attending pretty regularly. But I really, like I said, at that time I was playing Mortal Kombat, and I kind of made a choice at that point, like Mortal Kombat or Marvel.
Sure.
Probably gonna go with Mortal Kombat, because the thing about the Mortal Kombat guys that was great for me was it was like the exact opposite of the general scene. All the Mortal Kombat players were on the west side of town, whereas with Street Fighter, everybody's on the east side of town, like every good player and all that stuff, So it was like, get a lot of practice and stuff like that. It was kind of hard for me, so
sure,
it was really nice for the west side players. They lived it was like kind of on like Thunderbird near I want to say like near 75th or something like that. So it was pretty close, and there was these two twins, Mark and Jeremy Camps.
Yep.
They went by Morty Seinfeld and Sal 87, who had a lot of equipment. They had a lot of technical savvy, and they really liked Mortal Kombat. So it was like they would do a very good job of like going to, there was this place called Mana Works. It was on 43rd and Thunderbird, I believe, right across from ASU West. Okay. It was like a little trading card game shop, and they were friendly with the owner, and they would hook up with Frank Harrelson, AZHP, who was just on the show. Yeah. They'd hook up with him a lot to have tournaments because he liked Mortal Kombat, and so did Jedi Rob Chirini, who ran Devastation. So you'd have Devastation events, you'd have AZHP events, then you'd have the Mark and Jeremy events. So there was plenty of places to play Mortal Kombat. There was plenty of time to get experience. And then at the time, after EVO, so that was when I started playing a lot more, was after EVO. We had a local player, Alex Reyes, and he went by Detroit Ballin, and he did really good at EVO. Yeah. He did really good, and he was a really good player. So it was like we kind of had this really good player, and I think Juicebox did pretty well at MK9 that year, so he was playing. So it was just, it was a time to be a good scene. It was the time to, you're playing with good players, pretty decent people. It's small, so you don't feel like you get lost in the shuffle or whatever. So they would host at their apartment. We'd go over there, we'd play. And I would say, like, at that time, like the cornerstones of it were the Camps brothers, Detroit Ballin, Alex, and then there was other players. This guy named Asa Sporbert. He went by Asamo. He would come all the time. There was a guy in Tucson named Brandon Hildenbrandt. He went by B-Wiz. He would play when he could, but he was a really strong player. And then I joined in after that, and I was like, it was us five or so playing a lot all the time. And we'd get new people to come in every now and again. But for the most part, I would say it was pretty consistently us, because the tournaments started to show up because we couldn't get enough people to come in. We would get like 10, 12 people or whatever. And so that was when I just went full bore, because I was at GCC at the time. So I wasn't taking college too seriously yet. So I'd play all the time, MK9. Learned it up and down, all the, Cabal on Hitbox, definitely. Mark had a Hitbox. We played with it. It was cheap. Alex played Cabal, so we knew how cheap Cabal was, so there's no surprises there. I played Kenshi, so I'm not, I can't throw any stones. I played a really cheap character too. Uh-huh. And we played it all the time. And eventually my whole thing was I could always get third. So I could get third, but I couldn't beat Mark. I definitely couldn't beat Alex. And there was one time in the summer of 2012. That was also, 2012 was the first time I traveled to a tournament. It was Final Round 2012. Hunk of shit tournament, but it was fun. Mortal Kombat was ran all day Sunday, a bizarre logistical choice for a 100+ man tournament. And it went to the very, very late night, and it was not very good. But Alex and Mark had both gotten top 8 at Winter Brawl, and I think Alex got top 8 at Final Round. So it was like, He was still really good, so we always knew we had good players. So finally in the summer 2012, one tournament I beat Alex with Jax. I played Jax specifically. We at the time, not to get into a lot of Mortal Kombat 11 lore, but like people thought Jax did really good against Cabal, so I learned how to play Jax, and I did end up beating him in
nice.
winners. I lost in losers, but I won in winners for sure.
Okay.
And then I lost to Mark again, and I was like, God, I think I just need to go back to Kenshi. And then by the time, like the end of that year, I would say I could confidently, we would go to this hookah lounge that was on like Greenway and like 75th or something like that. It was like this little hookah lounge next to an Arby's.
Okay.
And I won a tournament there for the first time. I used Liu Kang a lot, and then I used Kenshi, and I ended up winning that tournament. I finally beat Mark. And then after that, it was like I couldn't lose. Like it was like I finally I unlocked the code. And now to be fair, Alex wasn't going to a lot of those tournaments, so I would have definitely lost to him. He was a lot better player than I was. But it was like I finally got into this groove, but I couldn't replicate it at a national level. Like I went to SoCal Regionals 2013, and I got fucking destroyed. And it was embarrassing. And it was like, damn. And Alex got top 8, and I was like, oh man, it's like you always feel like, damn, you're so far behind, right?
Yeah. Especially when it's your group of training partners, and you're like you're coming up together, right? And you're constantly comparing your progress with one another.
He beat the best Kenshi player at the time, a guy named Pig of the Hut.
Oh,
and he beat him because we played all the time. I know that for a fact, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you feel like, damn, like maybe I should be able to do that. Now, 2013 was interesting because that was when, so we've been hosting, tournaments that was again with Keith and Rob and those guys that run those kind of tournaments. So we would go to UAT sometimes, but 2013 was a big changing point where now who was a generous guy who lived in South Phoenix, and he had a big house, and he loved to host games, and a lot of the like kind of local Ranbats kind of changed to go to his house. So like every game under the sun was there, and I had pitched because he had I can't remember what happened. There was like King of Fighters 13 he was gonna run, but then nobody showed up, so he was mad, so he dropped it, and he wanted to put another game in there, and I lobbied to him personally, can we get Mortal Kombat there? Because I'll get people to come in, and he did, and he listened. So we came up there. We had the last kind of set of Ranbats before Injustice came out, was at the Has house, which was fun. But like I said, I had to learn some harsh lessons about, now that you're seen as like a top player, you got to learn how to not be an asshole when you say things, little things like that. But I did my best. And then when Injustice came out, Has was all in on Injustice. So
he was.
Yeah. So for a long time, every casual session was at Has's house for Injustice. The first tournament for Injustice was hilarious because I was playing Superman and I knew he was busted. He was busted beyond all compare. And I looked at Alex and he was like, "You playing Superman?" It's like, "I'm definitely playing Superman." He's like, "Yeah, that's right. You better." So we both knew we were both playing Superman. And now I was riding high because at the launch event, which was at the Scottsdale Fashion Square Microsoft store, rest in peace.
Yeah.
It was the final event for Devastation. Also, rest in peace. Rob was moving on to, I think it was Activision Blizzard at the time.
Oh wow!
So he had one last tournament, and it was a launch event for Injustice. Now, Injustice had a demo that came out, so everyone was mostly playing the 3 characters that were there, which was Batman, Wonder Woman, or Lex Luthor. Luckily, no one picked Superman. I just picked Batman, and it was first to 1 only, so I could fraud my way out. And I ended up beating Alex and the tournament, and I won an Xbox and a copy of the game for it. So I was riding high. I'm like, this is gonna be my game. I want to beat everybody. Of course, that first tournament, Alex picked Superman, and he fucking destroys me again. I get second. I'm like, oh my God, I'm never going to do this. And then Alex fortunately stopped coming out. So, I didn't have to learn how to get to his level. And I switched Injustice. I played Green Lantern after I played Superman. And I just thought, I was playing on all cylinders. The game made sense to me. It was a different game than MK, but it was kind of the same in some ways. So that was when, I became friends with a local guy named Evan. He went by 4x4 Lobo, and he always he was down to travel and stuff. So we would actually go to Wednesday night fights for Injustice. We travel all the way there. So that's like a 6-hour drive or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
And then we'd get there, we'd play in this tournament. And, because it was Injustice, it was one of the lower end games. It would take a long time because people didn't run through it as fast. We would be done at like 2 a.m. Time to go home, all the way back, 6-hour drive at 2 a.m. And it sucks. I mean, we would get home at like 7 or 8 in the morning and just absolutely knackered. But it was a good experience. I got to meet a lot of great guys out there. Emperor Theo from SoCal, MF Slayer, guys like that. I actually saw Nick and John when they had moved out there as part of to be at SoCal. I would see them at Wednesday Night Fight. I didn't know them, but I would see them, so it was like
Oh,
nice
nice.
to
Yeah.
see people out
Yeah.
there. And that's when I switched to playing Deathstroke in that game because I thought he was really good. He used to be thought of as broken when the game first came out, and he got some nerfs.
Yeah.
And it was like, people didn't think he was that good anymore, but I still believed. And I didn't have a great showing at Wednesday Night Fights when I debuted him. But first major outside tournament I traveled to was SoCal Regionals 2014. I ended up getting 8th.
Yeah.
I tied for 7th, and it was a big deal. And I beat MF Slayer, who had placed at Evo. I placed above a lot of Evo placers. So that was like a big shining. That's still to this day the best accomplishment I ever did. And if you want to talk about how it is nice to be part of a scene, I'll tell you 2 stories that involve SoCal Regionals. So SoCal Regionals 2013, this is where I got destroyed playing Kenshi, and I felt bad.
Right.
My one good win was that in losers, I beat Chris G. Now, Chris G played MK9 pretty frequently. Was still good at it. I mean, it was definitely a side game, but he was no slouch at it. So at the time, he played Reptile. And at the time, my mentality was still a little bit more, it wasn't great. And my mentality was like, well, it doesn't matter. I beat Chris G. It's whatever. I don't care. But again, reality kind of hits you like a brick. Armando tapped me on the shoulder and was like, dude, you just beat Chris G? I was like, yeah. And I was like, I was sad because I'm like, dude, I'm barely beating Chris G. Like, I'm not good.
High expectations for yourself.
I didn't say that, but that was my mindset. And Armando was like, dude, you beat Chris G. That was really good. Like, dude, he's really good.
Yeah. I was gonna say Chris G. Like, I played MK9 very briefly, but I played it at Evo 2011. That was my first Evo.
Okay,
yeah, and I lost to him, and he ended up getting 5th. So I was,
I
didn't feel so bad.
Yeah,
I didn't feel bad because
by 2013, he definitely wasn't the force he would have been in like 2011 and 2012. But like it was a hard fought match. I should have definitely taken that as like that's definitely a big win. I didn't, but like Armando being there and saying like, dude, that was really good.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, that feels a little bit better. So then 2014. Not only am I with guys now, so now in Injustice, the scene expanded a lot. So now we have younger guys. We had a guy named Matthew that was there. We had this kid named Alex Wynn who was there, who was really, very energetic and excitable. We basically, Injustice felt like it was like, despite everyone from MK11 still playing or MK9 still playing, Injustice was such a different game. It attracted a different brand of people. So it was like, you got this new crew. You're still there from the old guard hanging in there. And then when I was for top 8, which was very early, it was like maybe 8:30 or whatever. So, a lot of people were late and stuff like that. So I showed up there. I'm ready to play. And before I get up to the main stage where you're getting ready to play, I turn around. I hear someone call my name. I turn around, and there's Rika Reedman. And in the crowd, I see Scott. I think Abe was there. And like 2 other players. I can't remember who, but it was like a little contingent. And I'm like, dude, you got this. You got this, man.
Yeah.
I didn't ask. They were just there.
Yeah.
And like the first time I won a game, everyone in the crowd, all 5 of them jumped right up to start cheering. Yeah. I lost that match, but it did feel really good that there was, I didn't even have to say anything.
I think that's kind of like
nobody gave a shit about Injustice. I know they didn't, and I don't expect them to, but it was like, yeah, it didn't matter. Like they were all there.
I think that's a big part of our scene is that like we don't always play the same games competitively with each other, but the fact that we all practice in the same area, we have the same friendship groups, we all sometimes we play in the same tournaments together, even if we play different games. Like it's still a community, right? And at least my Evo experience, it's like it's a game of just trying to find all the different Arizona players and trying to go and support them,
I looked hard for you at Evo this year, John.
Me too, man. Yeah, I looked for you too. I found Latif, but I didn't find you.
I found Kyle and Aaron Spurlock. I ran into them.
I didn't see them at all, dude.
Yeah, no, I was lucky. It was the Saturday night. They were wrapping up, and I passed by the KOF area, and I saw Aaron. Therefore, Kyle's not too far behind.
Yeah.
So it was like that was good. But yeah, it definitely is a game of like finding. And I think that SCR was like really good for Arizona.
Yeah, that's the one they did well in Cross Tekken.
I think
as well.
Abe, Rock, and Scott all got top 8 at Cross Tekken or something like that. It was nuts.
Yeah.
A big shout out to Cross Tekken too. I got to play in that when I was like on hiatus from like playing MK and playing Injustice for a little while. And that scene, as small as it was really great. I would travel with Jelani Rocknan. He was a real dedicated player. So we would go out to, this is when TGZ started up. So we were having matches there, and Abe was very welcoming and we wanted more people to play. And he was an asshole, and he played Jin and Akuma, and it was really annoying. But he was very open. He was open to giving tips. He wanted everybody to get better, all this stuff. I actually was able to go out to the last casuals gathering at Arcade in a Box in Tucson with Jelani, and we played cross Tekken there. And so I never got to see that when it was like going and running. So it was nice to see that little bit of Arizona history. If you guys don't know, Arcade in a Box was like it was like a local arcade. I think they did stick work and customization, stuff like that. So it ended up closing shop in, I think, 2013, and they had one last big hurrah event, and it was really nice, to see the Tucson guys, also all cool people, and it was just like a nice little gathering. My time playing cross Tekken, because, like I said, again, you go out and it's not so scary. Like, everybody's real. They want you to get better, and so sometimes people have different ways of activating that, but it is what it is, and I enjoyed my time there. And then the real big thing that happened in 2013 was like all this drama with we stopped playing Injustice at his house. I'll admit it was my fault. I said goofy shit I shouldn't have said. Basically what happened was I would get frustrated because I was trying really hard to be better, and our scene was small. So it's like when you get time to play, you have to play all the time.
Yeah.
And a big part of Haz's thing, and it's not a big deal. He just liked to party, and he liked to do the things people do at parties, which is, have a good time. And I would get annoyed because I'm a pretty straight edge guy, and I just didn't want to. And I think one time I got upset because the guy who was my ride was definitely feeling after effects a little bit. And I think that led to me. I was on some podcast, and I made a scathing remark about, like, I just wish, I could play the games without everybody getting, intoxicated or whatever, and it was an offhand remark, and he took it pretty personally. And I feel bad. Like, I did feel bad that I said that, and that caused him. And he just was like, I'm not hosting casual anymore. So it's like, fuck. Well, again, you watch your mouth, you say some things, you need to learn how to not do that and be an adult.
Yeah.
But ultimately, TGZ, the gaming zone out in Tempe, they started hosting all these tournaments, and it has been consistent for almost 10 years now. That they're just a good hub for everybody to come and play at, before, as far as I understand, we were always like switching, like sometimes it'd be a local business, sometimes it'd be somebody's house. We didn't really have like a real steady, this is where we all play, that would last more than like a year or a year and a half or whatever. And then the gaming zone guys who are also super into the tournaments themselves, it was like, that was a boon. And then it was like, this is a perfect place. So
yeah. So before we get into TGZ real quick, if I could inject some commentary on what it was like to see the previous era, which is like the Haz era, and
yeah, you guys have definitely more experience than I do. Yeah.
One thing is that I got to see you we heard the perspective, heard it from your perspective, like your history, right? But I did get to. I was active during that same time, which is different than a lot of the guests on the podcast. And
true, yeah.
I got to see what what your experience was like from my perspective, and it looked like, yeah, you were really neat, like you were really deep with this group, this MK group, and you were practicing. But I also want to say that we saw you everywhere. You were in every game scene. You were playing every game out there. You're supporting every scene. So Cross Tekken is a good example of one. But I saw you playing Marvel. I saw you playing 4. I saw you playing a lot of different games that I play as well. And so that's how a lot of these friendships, I think, started. Because I didn't really play MK very much, but you were cross-pollinating everything.
Yeah, so I really cared the games. I really liked the games. So and especially even now, if there's like a new game and I'm pretty into it, I'll show up for the launch tournament at least. I'll try and play. So just some side tours that I took during all those years. I played Soul Calibur 5 pretty extensively for a while. We had one of our local players, a guy named Chase. He is one of the better Soul Calibur players in the nation. And a lot of people don't know that. He's very, very good. And I think he got he went to at Frosty Faustings, whatever, he got 3rd or 4th or something like that.
This is Kinetic Clash, right?
Kinetic Clash. I'm sorry. Yes, Kinetic Clash. Very, very good player. And so it was you have him, you have Dr. Dog or Brian Dawson, who's a pretty experienced 3D player. We had this guy named Ray Avalos. He went by KPC, I think. Uh-huh. He's a really experienced player, really cool guy. So it was you have this little scene of Soul Calibur players. So I learned how to play Soul Calibur. I played Killer Instinct. I really got into Killer Instinct in 2014 or so. And I remember I went and played, and I went 0-2, and I was like, I think I need to reestablish what I'm doing here. I talked with my friend Dizzy, a guy named Aaron, who is now he's a big shot designer at Netherrealm Studios. So back then he was just a pretty good player. He
Yeah.
liked playing Killer Instinct a lot. We played TJ combo, so he taught me all these tricks and stuff. Then I went back and I won the fucking thing, and I didn't drop a game. And it was like, okay, now I see what I was doing wrong. So playing Killer Instinct was really fun because I got to play with Alejandro and George,
Yeah.
Macho Punk. He's a good guy. Like Anthos, Nick or Steve Gannon, great
Steve
guy.
Gannon. Yeah.
I learned Steve is a big also like getting me out of my bubble or whatever. Like Steve at one point wanted to do something for Killer Instinct really fun, and I had just beat Macho Punk, who had been winning all the Ran bats. I beat him pretty convincingly in winners.
Yeah.
And he's like, that doesn't happen very often. And he's like, I think if he ran it back, he might actually win. And I was like, well, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. So at the end game bar, which I don't know if still is there in Tempe, but they wanted to have this thing, somewhat, yeah, whatever. And he wanted to have this big event. And so what he did was him and Nick or Macho Punk, they shot a video together where Steve was Hulk Hogan and
Yeah.
Macho Punk had the Macho Man glasses and bandana, and they like cut a promo on me, challenging me for this money match. And I just thought it was hilarious. And I was like, yeah, I'm definitely down. So we went to the end game bar, and then they had the live mic, and he was dressed, and Steve was dressed as Hogan and was cutting promos on the mic. He gave me the mic. I gave him my Ric Flair. You know that I'm the man. I was doing. I dropped the elbow on my hoodie, and so we just had a great time. I ended up winning the money match 5-0. It was a pretty good.
Oh wow. Okay.
Macho Punk had learned one trick around one of the mix-ups I did, but once I adjusted, it did not go well.
Got it.
And then we had our rubber match we had a round robin tournament at TGZ. Now, when they say round robin, what they meant is you play every single person 7 times. And I was
Wait,
like,
what?
Yeah, I was like, I don't think that's how a round robin works. And he was like, well, we don't have that many people, so we just figured we'd do that. I'm like, it's gonna take like a really long time. He's like, no, it'll be fine. No, it'll be fine. And so like best of 7 against like every person there, and it's like it was brutal. I think it was like 8 hours. But in the end, I was up by like I think 2 games against Macho Punk, who he did really good. I knew if I could win most of my other matches, we had a rubber match. He was up 3-0. I came back, won 4 games in a row. Great match. I was really excited. And then I ended up winning. I think I won like $250.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I really enjoyed playing Killer Instinct with like Alejandro and those guys. They were super fun to be around.
Yeah.
It's a fun game. Killer Instinct's a really unique game. There's no game like it. So I think also playing all those games gives you a lot of experience, and like this is how you learn how to look for good stuff. This is how you get some sort of like general knowledge of like how these games work, so that when it comes out, or when a new game comes out, you can go there. And to proof of that, in my opinion, was that for MKX Injustice 2, I won the launch tournaments because I have experience. And even though MKX I wasn't a huge fan of, I knew the game well enough at that point to pick a good strategy and just take it all the way to the win. Same with Injustice 2, even though we had great new players. So like in MKX, I took a lot of time off, and new players like Dimitri, I can't remember what his tag is. Sammy, Flappy.
Yep.
He was a young kid, was super good. And just a bunch of other players had just sprouted up out of nowhere, and they were really good.
Jordan, I think, would be another one.
Jordan was playing. Yeah, he's playing MKX. He was good. I was like, damn, all these guys are good now. Like I'm just used to, everyone's kind of newer, and you can get some wins here and there. But now it's like, damn, these guys are all good. So it was nice to go up against some of those younger guys and be able to still pull it out in the end. And then in Street Fighter 5, I went to the launch tournament. I think I got like 7th using Fong.
Oh yeah, you did play Fong.
He had not been available. So that was my strategy. He had not been available in the pre-games. So it was like he was like the only character. Nobody knew what was going on.
Right,
so
right.
Well, shit, I can steal some wins doing that. And I did. But it was like, for Street Fighter, I don't usually do that well. Like it's a game I play, but I'm not really like super into it. And then when we did when Jon, I think, hosted like the boot camp series, where it was like you have a bunch of stations and people play there, and if they lose, they go down a station, they can go up a station. I was pretty consistently in like the first station.
You were, yeah.
And that was also a good experience of like one of the things that sometimes you miss going offline. I think a lot of people they don't experience this. They really keep it online, and I think you lose this really valuable experience where sometimes you have to learn how to mitigate some sort of conflict, or you have to hear some advice that you may not want to hear at the time. And it can be really difficult when you're online and you can kind of put yourself in a space where none of that reaches you,
Yeah.
to deal with it when it happens. So, great example. At the boot camp, 2 different things happened. I remember one was I played Nico and Mr. SNK, and he was not feeling the game very much, but he was trying to play Birdie and trying to enjoy it.
Right.
I was playing Rashid, and I think one time I just kind of like ran over him with some bullshit, and he got really mad, and you could tell he was like, "Fuck!" Like, and he was mad, but he looked at me real quick and was like, "It's not at you, right?" Like, "Oh, yeah, it's fine. Like, it's all right. It's whatever." So you learn how like some people get mad and they blow off steam, but it's hot air. It's nothing personal.
Yeah.
They're just kind of mad or whatever.
Nico's
a great
really
guy.
good at he's good at letting you know too, like that.
Yeah,
that
he
he's in
he'll
control
be
of it, right?
he'll be very quick of like the banter
Yeah.
and stuff, like oh, like I'm just kidding or whatever. So that was that's something. And then another thing, that funny thing that happened, there was another thing where I was waiting for my turn to play, and John walked by and was like, "Hey man, how you doing?" And I was like, "Man, I'm not doing great." And he was like, "Why?" And I said, "Well, the problem is," he goes, "I'm always in the first, I'm in the first group, and I'm getting my ass kicked by all those guys." So it was John Guerrero, Yus name was. He played Rue, and he was really strong player. Um, and he was kicking my ass. And then I would play Jeff, and Jeff and I would kind of go back and forth. And I was playing Dan, he'd kick my ass. But then I'd always win the elimination game. So I stayed in the first group.
Yep.
And I was just telling John, like, man, I'm getting my ass kicked. Like, I really should just probably go to the second group. That's probably where I get some. And John looked at me and goes, "Tanner, do you understand that, like, by winning in the first group, you are in fact one of the better players here, so you do deserve to be there regardless of how much you're losing, right? Like, do you understand what that is? Like, do you understand what you're saying?" And I was like, "Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying." So it's like you need this weird, like, your ego takes this beating, but then somebody has to set you right to go like, "Dude, what are you talking about? You're in the first group.
Yep.
What are you complaining about?" So it was like you need that sometimes. You need this kind of little kick to someone to be like, "What?"
Yeah,
And
keep a track of your perspective, right?
yeah,
Exactly.
and in person you get that check because people, it's like you can just ignore online. You can turn it off or whatever. In person, someone would come up to you and just say that, and you kind of have to deal with it. And like I said, sometimes it can be a little humiliating. Sometimes it can be annoying, but like it's very valuable. It's a very good thing to learn how to mitigate that sort of thing and like conflict. And oh, you played a guy and they get real mad and they challenge you to money match or whatever, and then you learn how to like navigate that like exchange or whatever. And I think it's a skill sorely lacking, I think, in some people that they can't, it's they go online and then they get really upset and they get into these toxic patterns where they expect, oh, I should like me, I should be beating Chris G.
Yeah.
Why? He's a good player. You should just take the W,
Yeah.
But like I said, you can get into these patterns where that you only hang out in an online group. So one of the problems I had was all my friends online when I played MK11 or MK9 and then later Injustice. It was like a group of like all top dudes. So it was like 16-bit, Pig of the Hut, Emperor Theo, all these guys who were like winning tournaments or coming close. And it was like your perspective is way skewed. You have to learn how to like take it down a notch. Like just because you lose to this person doesn't mean you're trash because that's how they talk. They're just talking because they know they have the experience and they're better, but you don't have to hold yourself to that standard. It can mess with your head a little bit.
Yeah.
So
No, I agree.
learned, yeah. So it's very humbling to like you go in a local scene and you get tested and sometimes you don't always win or whatever, but you kind of end up, to me, it's more indicative of where you're probably actually at than like going to a major and you get like really low and you're like, oh man, I suck. But then it's like you go to your local scene, you're like, maybe it's not that. Maybe there's a little bit, there's luck involved. There's all sorts of stuff that's involved in a tournament that you can't get too hung up on.
Matchups. The fact that it's
Matchups.
not, like someone has advantage in the matchup no matter what out of the gates, right? So,
right. So
like,
yeah,
you might just get a bad draw.
So take that first group I was in. So I'm Fong and I'm playing against 2 Ryus, our Mika, and a Nash. I'm losing all the time. Like, of course. So it was like, to me, your advice made perfect sense. And I remember I asked John, John was kicking my ass. I think I beat him like once or twice. And I was like, John, what do you think I should do better in this match? He goes, honestly, man, I think you should pick a different character. Like, I don't know what you're doing. And I was mad at first. I was like, come on, man. Like, you gotta have some advice. Like, I'm gonna pick a different character. But then 2 weeks later, I came back with Rashid, and I'm just beating dudes. In the tournament, the mini tournament we had, I ended up beating Mike or Luminaire, who beat me in winners. So I was feeling good, and I'm like, I think Rashid's pretty damn good. Maybe he was right. And I'm like, damn it, he was right. Because you want to be like, no, I was right the first time. But it was like, no, Jon was probably right. He was probably right.
Yeah.
So yeah, all that stuff it's when you have a local scene that again is like very open and everybody wants to chat with each other and we all talk to matchups and stuff. And it's like, and also the other thing about the local scene is it's now I don't have much in the way of like examining everything, but for me, especially in the last like 10 years or so, relatively drama free. I mean, we don't have, the bad eggs that come in. I mean, we have guys, people get mad, they get in arguments or whatever, but like as far as like this is going to tear the whole thing apart because two guys can't, amicably separate their differences or whatever.
Yeah.
It hadn't happened,
Do you ever wonder if that's because because the stakes were higher back then because the conflicts were that big, or did they just seem that big because we were younger?
So I always think the problem before was that it's the pettiness of small differences, right?
Yeah.
Like it was like someone didn't think a game was good, that then caused drama. But it was like, how stupid is that, right? Like, okay, they don't like Street Fighter 4, and they're not going to go to the tournament, so it's not like you have to worry like, oh, they're going to be there and mock the game or whatever. Yeah, I think you're right in that it seems bigger than it is, but like sometimes that's all that matters. I mean, luckily we don't have like we haven't had a lot of really big like, oh, here's a theft issue, or something like that where that I mean, it's happened, but it doesn't happen that often anymore. The TGZ guys seem like they like us there.
Yeah,
they've never had a problem, and I think we respect that. And that's good. And, it fosters more people to start. Like, I know Dragon Ninja, he started TOing when he was there a lot. And he got really good at it. He's very, very good at it.
Yes. He's
and so, it was like he learned how to do it there. Rob always comes in and does stuff there. Abe was doing it there for a while before he retired, too. It was like, it's the perfect place. I mean, everybody's super cool and welcoming, and they're willing to let you learn and run a tournament as long as you don't throw trash on the floor or whatever. And it's like, that's the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I can't say enough how lucky we are that like the Arizona scene is as pretty open as it is. Now, of course, there might be little subcules of drama in smaller games that I don't know about. So if I'm ignoring that, I'm not meaning to, but like, I just don't see it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I was gonna say like because I got here in 2012, and then I basically went to one RAN bet, and then I think I went to maybe one or two other things, and I was like at Haz's, and then my work schedule like it didn't allow me to have weekends off, so like I was kind of out of the scene. Yeah, I was out of the scene for like I don't know, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years. So that time where you were talking about like where you were starting or where things were going on in Haz's, like I wasn't involved in the scene or saw any of that stuff. Like I'd see the drama like in the Facebook group and here and there, but I just I did so I don't know a lot of the details about all that kind of stuff that you guys were talking about, but I'd heard about it. I'd heard kind of put pieces together from like different things that I had heard.
Yeah, like I said, it's older, and plus it's more personal because you're in somebody's house. I mean, that's why when I said what I said. Because if you think about how insulting, this guy's opening his house where his children live, his wife is, and I'm just saying this thing kind of blithely about it. And like, they're going to take it personally. And I understand why. And it makes total sense. But when you have a neutral business where not only do they accept you there, you're not like this weird hanger on that they luckily can get money from. Those guys actively care and want to foster a better, community for everybody. That helps,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I try not to use. Oh yeah, Jon, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
You were going to say something?
Benny. It was Benny's. Go ahead, Benny.
No, you were going to say something.
Oh, shoot. It had to do with TGZ in particular.
Okay.
But yeah, they're good guys. I think they just in general they've been a home for our scene for so long, and I think that the fact that when you purchase a pass for the lounge, it puts you on even ground compared to like, hey, I'm going over to this person's house and I may know them very well or I may not know them very well, but if I do know them very well, I'm going to get special treatment, and you have this click crowd stuff versus here's a business establishment. I'm giving some money to them, and it's a transaction, right?
It's a transaction, the neutral transaction to a third party who is uninterested in, and it doesn't run the tournaments, so it's like, definitely. It's been great. And I just can't say enough about how TGZ really being a really grounding spot for the past like 10 years has been really helpful, probably. And because they host Smash and stuff like that too. So it's not even like it's restricted to like just certain games.
Yeah.
As long as if you can get enough people there, you can go there and you have a tournament and it's fine, you know.
Yeah, Smash is their big money maker.
Bedrock,
I think.
yeah.
I see that.
Every
I see that
Tuesday,
place always
I think,
packed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could go in the interest of the NRS scene, learning more about that. So you talked about a little bit about MKX. Did we talk about Injustice 2 yet, or
well? So there? It's because I'm just not as connected through that time.
Sure, yeah.
Opening tournament, and then afterwards we would have casuals at TGZ on occasion.
Yeah.
But you know, the truth is, I wasn't. You know, I had just graduated, or I was in the middle of like graduating, so it was like I was trying to find a job or whatever, and so I wasn't as plugged in as I might have been. But a lot of the players that were there, like Dimitri, got like 9th at Evo or something like that for Injustice 2. Really good run for him.
I didn't know that.
Really good. Yeah, it was like in 20. I think it was the 2018 one, so like the second year. But yeah, he got if not 9th, he got pretty damn close.
God damn. Okay.
Yeah, he did really good for himself there. And then
I just got to meet Dimitri in person a couple weeks ago, so that's
really
cool. Yeah.
Sammy, whenever he would play, he was always really good. So yeah, and then Mark, another Mark, not Mark Camps. He is from Tucson. He played the games a lot. He's real good. And so I think just the Injustice 2, by that time, a lot of us had whittled out. Like a lot of the old guard is just, you know, they had kids, they grew up, you know, whatever.
Sure.
And so like I was like one of the last hangers on, and so I felt like a responsibility, you know, to be there for like, you know, there's guys like there's a guy named Christian, he was really good, Dimitri, Sammy. I felt like I should participate, even though I don't, you know, the big in like the group chat and we're posting memes to each other. I'm not really, that's not really my bag. Like I don't like doing that.
Sure.
So it's like the younger kids, I just don't like. I don't on that level. I'm just not a big group chat. Like let's meet, let's talk online constantly. Because I'm like, the problem is when you get online and in a group chat stuff, you would start saying things that you probably wouldn't say. You'd get checked in person.
Yeah.
And I never want that to happen because then I forget my place. So it's like I just stick to the offline stuff, you know, and we'll, you know, it's not like a problem. Like we'll see each other. It's fine.
You have a different outlet for putting spicy stuff on the internet.
Absolutely.
Think,
yeah.
Right?
My outlet is not venting privately to friends. I will just say it in public. And then I can do that and it's fine. And it's like, I'll take the repercussions or whatever. But like, cause you know, sometimes you get in group chats and like, there's like, you find out things about people that you're like, I don't, why do I know this? I don't want to know this. And I can't think the same way. So it's like, I gotta move out of here. You know, I gotta move on to something else here.
Did you find that got exacerbated with the pandemic?
So again, by the pandemic, I had sort of excised myself from a lot of like the groups and stuff like that. So like MK11, I played with those guys and stuff, but I wasn't in the group chats or anything like that. Like I said, I just feel like at a point I'll fall back into the same pattern I got during Injustice, where I was in group chats and stuff, and I had this mentality of like, oh, everybody sucks, and we're actually the only good people, and it just I remember that headspace, and I didn't to be honest, I didn't like it very much. So I try to, the only way you're going to get out of that situation is you got to take yourself out of it. So group chats and stuff, I try to stay away from, if I'm in one, I'll put it on mute and I'll check it occasionally. But for the most part, I'd rather, just talk to people and, occasionally talk. If I need to talk to someone, I'll talk to them. But just being in the group or whatever, I don't feel like if I go away for a long time and I come back, nobody's going to know who I am or whatever. Like if I'm not in a group, it doesn't matter. I go to a tournament, I say hi to John, I say hi to Scott, I say hi to Aaron and Kyle. Like I'll say hi to everybody. And it's like nothing ever happened. Like it doesn't matter that it's been a long time or whatever. So I don't feel like I need to be like, oh, if I'm not relevant, if I'm not in the group chat or I'm missing out or something like that. I just it's a different mentality than a lot of people. I understand that. It might come across a little weired, but like I swear I'm not antisocial.
No, it's funny because
this fucking podcast, I've talked like an hour, so it's like
because of the group chat mentality, like that, that was the substitute for the offline community for these past couple of years. But like in reality, it's the solution to it is to go offline anyway. To get away from the toxicity of group chats, it's to go and hang out with the group in person, and then one's
grass,
as big of a touch grass.
Yeah, touch grass. Yeah.
Well, the thing about like Mortal Kombat and stuff too was because we were such a small group. A lot of times it was just too small to ever really have tournaments.
Yeah.
So we were always talking in group chats anyways. And like I said, it just a lot of that time, I just, it's not that I don't look back on it fondly, but I don't like the way I personally was during that time and to me, I put that with, I'm just talking online a lot. I'm not actually seeing these people enough to check myself, and nobody knows what I'm comfortable with. Like if you're joking with me and you say something, some things I'm not going to take very nicely, and I would in person I can just say that to you and it's not awkward. I can take you aside and be like, hey, look, don't say that. But in person, I gotta in front of the whole chat. I gotta if I have to say something, it's awkward, and I just like it better in person.
It's the Nico thing, right? When Nico had an outburst, and then he said, that's not you, right? That doesn't translate over into group chat very well.
It doesn't very well. No, yeah, that's true too. And like a lot of those guys, I have, they're a little bit more trolly online. So like guys like Nick and Jon and Nico to an extent, like they're a little more trolly online. They don't take it very serious, but it's sometimes the tone doesn't translate. So it's like I know those guys in person, they're super cool or whatever, but like get online and sometimes I'm in a bad mood and I look at it and I interpret it in the worst, least charitable way. And then I get bitter about nothing and it's dumb. And like I said, it's just bad. It's just bad. I don't, I don't want to do that. So I just don't.
Yeah. So it's funny you talk about.
Oh, go ahead, Benny.
No, I was going to say, it's funny you mentioned the small tournaments for Mortal Kombat because like, a fun fact, that was the only fighting game tournament I won in Alaska. Was a 5-person Mortal Kombat 9 tournament.
Oh, that's fun.
I was the only person with an arcade stick. And so
really?
there was a ton of pressure. It was like at a play-in trade. And I was just like, I didn't know how many people to expect there. And then I walk in and like, I'm the only one that needs to sit in the chair because they used to have like TVs up in the, above eye level, like
play and trade. Yeah, if I remember, yeah, they would.
Yeah, so I had to ask for a chair, and I'd be sitting there like looking up at these TVs, and like I had all this pressure on me because I was like, man, I'm the only one here with an arcade stick. But that was like the only fighting game tournament I ever won, and it was a 5-person Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, this is interesting. I always played Mortal Kombat on a gamepad. So like for Injustice, when I did my best, people would look at me funny because I had an Xbox 360 gamepad, and I had to tell them like, "This is the best thing ever. Trust me." And they'd be like, "No, it's not. Like, have you ever played one?" And I'm like, "I play it all the time. What are you talking about?" But I've experimented with every type of controller too. Like I've had the arcade stick. I've been the only person there with an arcade stick sometimes. But a lot of times I use the gamepad. I've used the hitbox or leverless controllers. So I've used pretty much everything under the sun. So I can definitely identify with that. You're having that pressure of like, I'm the only one with a sophisticated controller here. I got to really do my work here.
Oh man, we got so much to ask you, but like I got to ask you about the hitbox stuff too. But in the interest of segueing into the next topic here is that is my segue. That's the meta.
You're segued.
We are consider yourself segued. But I am curious about them's fighting words. The blog that you are, I would call you famous for it, honestly.
Well, I don't know about that. Well, so that started because it's like in 2017 after I graduated, I got my degree for secondary education, and it didn't work out. Like none of the jobs I was looking for, I would get smacked down for all of them. The conditions kept getting worse. Arizona is not very friendly to public education, so it wasn't like this amazing job opportunity. So I was like, I kind of started dialing down how much I was looking for jobs in teaching, and then lo and behold, 5 years later, here we are. And so what I started doing in my downtime was I always wanted to do like a blog or something like that, and because a lot of the people when I was growing up on the internet, unlike these heathens that would go on like 4chan or go on message boards and stuff like that, I was on fighting game forums arguing about tier lists, or I was reading blogs of like famous political contributors or like entertainment blogs or something like that. Yeah. So I always wanted to do something like that. And I always felt like, okay, well, what do I want to talk about? So when I first started it was talking about like, I always would get, because the thing about the MK scene too, is because it was so, I don't want to say new because obviously people played older Mortal Kombat games in tournaments somewhere. So I'm hesitant to say new, but like with Mortal Kombat 9, it was like you had this kind of renewed interest and more large scale tournaments than ever. But because it's a very young scene with no institutions, and the people who've played it the longest are frankly crazy. And it's like you kind of have this real influx of people who want to take advantage of that. So one of the biggest things I remember happening was Triforce, after he had, gotten done being laughed out of the scene with his fucking power glove in Street Fighter. He was like, hey, over to NRS guys, and getting himself in there. And they're y'all kids. They don't know, they don't know what's what. So of course they all listen to him like he's the Pied Piper. And he's got dreams of glory and the esports desk and the power glove. And it's like, he's full of shit. And so it's like somebody's gonna call him out on this stuff. So I wanted to do like a blog where I was talking about like famous fiascos that I remember being a part of. So I started with like Devastation 2011, which again, although it was a tournament that was too good to be true. And it was. It was like $20 entry and you got entry into everything for free. And then it turned out to be a really big tournament that couldn't afford to pay people and it wasn't run very good. And so I just remember that tournament. So I talked about that. I talked about there was this famous thing. I don't know. You can read the blog back again, but like there's this thing called VXG in the Caribbean. It was a
Oh,
tournament.
yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
And it
It's a
was
beach.
a very, yeah,
The beach, the
Let's
beach.
go
Yeah.
to the beach. Yeah, that was that
Yeah.
whole thing. And like
Yep.
Triforce was like a big part of that. And there was this guy, and he always said it was God, it's been so long, I can't remember his name, but he would always introduce himself as your boy name. So he never just said, "This is my name." Rolando. He would always say, "This is your
Oh.
boy Rolando," and everyone
Yep.
would refer to him as your boy Rolando.
Your
And it's like,
boy Laurent.
he's
Yep.
not my boy. I don't know this guy.
Yep.
But it was like he was obviously very shady, and this whole tournament just didn't seem like it was worth a hill of beans. And of course, people went there, didn't end up getting paid again. Naturally, it was really weird. It was like the Fire Fest of FGC stuff. Really, honestly, yeah.
Fire.
It was Fire Fest 10 years before Fire Fest, if you get my drift. And so it was
Yeah,
like, it's a Caribbean location. The whole idea is that it's like, oh, it's the beach. It's like a vacation.
Yeah.
Gutex is going to be there, Lord Tex and Mike Ross and all stuff. And it's like, then you get there and it's like, we're not going to pay you. And this tournament's run by, literally being run by committee where you're going to back room and you've pulled in Yipes and other community dignitaries. And they're like, okay, how do we run this fucking tournament?
They just wanted
it's
to
like,
party.
so it's like, it was like that. And I started writing about stuff like that, but then I started drifting more and more into like, okay, as I was starting to exit my mentality of like, I'm always in the group chats and like, I have this mentality that's not healthy, need to be better about it. It was like, what I see in common with a lot of like the way people talk, how the greater communities operate all together and the problems they keep running into that can't be solved. And it's like, I think you need sometimes a third party to kind of put that on paper and just illuminate for you. Like, here's an example of like, when women don't want to be in fighting games, I'm like, let's take an example of this lady who felt the need to post her passport on the website to prove that she wasn't trans. It's like, do you think that kind of stuff might affect like why people don't want to be involved in the shit? So it was like, I wanted to point out things like that where I would see patterns of behavior that I thought were like harmful or could lead to long-term things. And I hate being right. I do. But unfortunately, I've been proven right time and time again. Like, I was one of the first people to call out Echo Fox for being very clearly didn't seem like they had a plan, really didn't seem like they had anything going on. And lo and behold, a year later, they were out of business within like a year and a half. So like when you see the patterns so many times, you can call them. I'm not Nostradamus here. I'm just looking at patterns of behavior and noticing, okay, this is going to all go up in flames and you're going to feel stupid later. But I'm telling you here, I can see it. Maybe need to figure out how we keep getting there, exit out of that.
It seems like almost it's gone from a review, almost like where you were going to tournaments and then reviewing your experience to.
Well, yeah,
like
I would do that sometimes. Yeah.
But it's almost turned into like an investigative journalism kind of deal.
So like I can tell you when that turn happened for sure. So I was just doing my normal thing. Some of the blogs would hit, they'd go viral on Twitter or whatever. But for the most part, it was pretty calm. I was never quiet about everything that happened with infiltration. I always was tweeting about it, and I thought the way the whole thing went down, not just like a condemnful of infiltration's behavior, which I certainly do, but the way that it was handled by both Panda, by all the tournaments and stuff, I felt was it was crappy. Like it wasn't good. And it's the same thing's going to happen again. So I was trying to point out, and I've updated the blog now. Originally it was very more heavily on the moral weight side of it. But I started to listen because I used to chastise the people that would say this. But really I realized the problem is we're having this, we're talking about a situation that could have been handled by people in charge. But then the problem is we get bogged down in this meta argument of like, not only did he do it, but is it bad? And it's like, well, I don't want to have that. That's not what we're talking about. Like, first of all, and also they're easily answerable questions. Like, did he do it? Yes, he did. There's proof everywhere. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So why are we arguing about this?
But that was part of your blog, is that you had to go and find a lot of that.
I
stuff,
had to,
right?
I had to do it. Yeah. So it was like I did the legwork to figure out. I learned. I sought out Korean people who could translate it for me. And it was like, I figured out like, yeah, pretty much it's pretty much exactly as it went down. And whether or not you agree that it should have been leaked in the first place, which, hey, I'll be honest, the fact that it came out at all was definitely someone intentionally trying to hurt his standing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's wrong, but you know what? The information came out. We got to act on it no matter what. And the problem was the response to act on it was to have Panda do an investigation, but really only consult with his lawyers. So they just had to put out a document that was very lawyerly and very much on only listening to his side. And then he got to have his own public statement. And then Capcom was like, well, he decided to sit out for a year, and that's probably good enough. I don't think we need to do anything more. And then the TOs were all like, well, that's good enough for me too. And I always felt like, well, why don't you just tack on a year after that? Because you want to sit out for a year, that's fine. But also you got to pay the piper from us. Because if it's not coming from us, there's no what's the punishment? Because I don't think the punishment should be the big focus, but if there's none, so if there is none, you don't set an example. Right? You don't set like the precedent for when you do something like this that has like real big outside consequences and you didn't tell anybody about it. And we just don't feel comfortable with that. I think you should learn, take the time off, fix whatever problems you got. And we're not going to judge you or anything. We're going to give you a year off. Just take the year. Just take another year but don't do it yourself. To do it yourself is to be like, well, I don't really care what anybody says, but I think I'm just going to take a year off because I feel it's the right thing to do. It's like giving him the verbal, it's giving him like the moral W, which is like, why? The guy doesn't deserve it.
But this is step going back to the morals thing. This, like you're talking about step 3 about what do we do about it, but we can't get people to agree on step 1, which is like, did it happen?
You're on page 392. Right? Yeah, we're on page 392, and they're like, I didn't have any pages to begin with. Yeah, because like the problem I was noticing in all the feedback was a lot of people were like, wow, did that really happen? Like they didn't even know, like, because the way the Panda document was so lawyerly, you didn't really get a sense of yes or no. They were always like, well, it's more complicated than that, which is true. But at the same time, if the simple question is yes or no, you didn't get the answer. So I just wanted to lay out like, well, it is a yes. And the reason why you think so is probably this, and that, where it's like very in between the lines. Like, and then there's a bunch of other like, circumstantial evidence that yes, might speak to somebody's character, but it doesn't really answer the question of yes or no. And so I felt by ignoring that, it was like, well, we're not even having the same discussion until we get past that. We can't move on to the discussion of the actual hard thing. So that's when it was like, I really enjoyed doing that. Obviously I can speak to the fact that it got really big. It blew up big time. Arguably this might sound cocky, but I would honestly say the reason why infiltration is banned now probably has to do with what I wrote.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah,
you have to take
that was passed around a lot.
Here's the other thing. Here's the real talk. You have to take the good and the bad with that, right?
Right.
So if you didn't want infiltration to be in tournaments, you wanted it banned. Hey, the claps from that, the people saying, "Hey, you did a really good thing," great.
Yeah.
But you also have to understand that that's written in digital ink that can't get erased. And when he says, "Hey, I've been suicidal because of this stuff," that's on you. And you have to deal with that personally and know what you're doing. So that is to say, I don't take this stuff lightly. I take it seriously. And I get really frustrated when people don't take it seriously and it becomes a team sports thing of like, yeah, fuck that guy, get him out of here, blah, blah, blah. You're not helping. Okay. Like this is a human being. Treat him like a human being. I know he did some real bad stuff. I agree with you first and foremost, but we're never going to get anywhere if you don't set a precedent and you just, it's a good thing that it happened. And they'll go, well, I didn't say to kill himself, but if he did, I'm not, it's not that big a deal. And it's like, dude, how could you say that about somebody? It's like, you have to be very careful not to lose the humanity in the process. So for me, it was like, I wanted to take my blog in a direction of like, now I'm doing things where I'm really investigating something and I'm trying to get people to open their eyes to something. And then they can hopefully have a conversation about that. So another big one I did was there was this team called Noble Gaming that was really involved in like the NRS side of things. They always seem shady to me, but I never really got conclusive of like how much was true, how much wasn't true. I was able to get a hold of not only at the time, their team manager who had transferred over to like the new regime, but also the former CEO. I talked to the new CEO and I basically got the story of what went down and how that organization went up in flames because a guy who was a jackass, like just a bro gamer who ran this thing and his main employee was a 16-year-old kid. And of course it's run like exactly what you would imagine. And then The problem is it gets bought up by this new company, and then I can see their only motive in mind is the profit. So
Right.
of course, right after that article goes up, not 2 weeks later, I see that Noble has basically ingratiated itself into a South American Overwatch or South American Rocket League organization and has fired all of its Overwatch players, most of its other players. And again, you point out the behavior in my article. I was like, I kind of feel like the same thing's going to happen again because it's not like it's any better. It's the same thing, but it's different. It's the level of not seriousness, but in a different, more like here's how we can make money
Yeah.
versus how is this just my personal play thing. They're both of them are bad. So that, and it always pays off. Like I always see people talk about it. It seems to get results. People seem to like it. So I'm going to keep doing it as much as I can. And hopefully that builds my profile, like to say that where I can be taken, maybe kind of seriously, just as an independent person who's blogging and has something to say. And hey, maybe people take it seriously. And like I said, with the infiltration thing, again, I'll take the credit and say that, yeah, I think it probably had a big thing to do. I don't agree with how it ended up in the end with the Evo thing. I think that was real rotten, but it got results. So to me, it's like, whatever you might say about me, I could say, you said famous. I don't know if I like that term, but there's some sort of influence there. And I
Right.
think I need to keep pursuing that.
I joke about calling you an influencer, right? But I
Yeah.
do think that like hearing you talk about the blog and the different stories that you've covered, and I say it like that because it feels like Benny and I are on the Tonight Show and we're interviewing a journalist on like as a guest right now, because you're kind of recounting a lot of what that journey was like. And so I am curious, because you spend a lot of time on these platforms talking about the idea that you have, or like these stories and the results of them and whatnot. But I'm curious about how these impacted you as a person, like the backlash that you faced. Did you get any death threats or anything like that from any of this kind of stuff?
No, like
Nothing.
that's the thing too. Like I have to be like, so the thing about it is like, it's like, oh, you took this brave stand, like you went after infiltration.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a brave stand, to be clear. Like that, there's a lot of people that will say things, but for the most part, the people that could do something about it, they all agree with me. The people who could direct the most backlash towards me, they all agree with me. So it's not like I wasn't taking a stand by doing that. Now, did I get some trolls? Oh yeah. If you look at the infiltration blog, the first line is like, terrible blog, faggot, why are you so fat? All this. It's just name calling, all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, that sucks, but you know what? No one's going after my job. No one's trying to dox me, anything like that. So I never got any of that. Now I could, if I'm honest, I am probably pretty lucky that I'm not like a woman, I'm not a trans person, any of these things that would probably cause that to go exponentially up. But I can honestly say that I don't think a lot of the positions I take are necessarily controversial. What they do is that they challenge what the mainstream kind of narrative about something, and it makes you want to think about it in a different way. And I'm not trying to, like, I don't want to stick my thumb in necessarily people's eyes, but sometimes you just do, even though you agree with them. Like the thing about the infiltration thing where I disagree with how Evo handled it. I like all the people involved. I think they honestly want to do a good job. I just don't think they did a very good job. So if I'm not honest about that, then I don't think I'm being a very good friend, or whatever you want to call me, a friend, a confidant, a responsible person with a public platform, whatever you want to say.
Sure.
So my whole thing is like, I don't necessarily feel the backlash. Like you said, when I talk about the infiltration thing, especially more recently, like in the past, like during the pandemic and stuff like that, I had more time to think, as we all did.
Sure.
And you understand the weight of when you kind of are, tearing down a person in public, in digital ink that you could Google anywhere. And when you get cited in like a Kotaku article about him,
Mm-hmm.
it's, you have to take the good and the bad. You have to understand
Yeah.
that like that's someone's life that you've probably personally contributed just harm, where they're never going to get over this, right? Like personally feel bad about it. They can do quote unquote the work, or what do they call it? Be accountable or whatever. It doesn't matter. It'll track them the rest of their life. Anytime infiltration's at a tournament and he wins, the first Twitter thing is going to be like, go fuck himself. He's a wife. He's never going to get over it. He's never going to get over it. So you have to understand too that what you're contributing to, and be okay with it, or at least try to like make the tone of your stuff not so much towards like a outright condemnation of this person for life, as exposing why the problem keeps happening over and over again. And I think a lot of times what it was is just institutions that we have not taking it very seriously, and not doing a very good job and contributing to this sort of haphazard nature of like, hey, it's okay to go after these people because they're basically not people. So go ahead, have at it. And it's not good. It's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting seeing the evolution of I mentioned reviewing earlier, but you kind of have gone from criticizing it. I'm not trying to paint a negative light here, but a lot of this is about criticism, right? So
yes,
originally your criticism was painted towards people that were being selfish and taking advantage of other players, like TOs and whatnot. And then it started going towards people that were doing morally incorrect things, like the infiltration case. And now you're at the point where you're actually going after companies and people that are going after that are screwing the consumer, so to speak, or like they're throwing people under the bus for the sake of it. Because they're chasing money, right? And
chasing money, or like just kind of any sort of cultural clout, or they have like, because it's very in vogue to have the moral high ground. I mean, the perfect example, Evil Geniuses, when they brought on Chris G, it was like a year after his controversy or whatever, fully knew what he did, and they told him they were okay with it. And then they told him to move to Seattle. And then when a lot of stuff happened in 2020, where it was like, now the more, the better edge for you to get an advantage on your customers is to appeal to a very, social justice-y mindset. And that for EG meant, well, fuck Chris G. He's barely human. Let's just fire him. And it's like, dude, you guys were okay with it. And you told him and it was fine. And then all of a sudden now it's like, he's a liability. It's like, you guys, that's not okay. Like, I don't agree with what Chris G said at all. I think it was bad. But at the same time, does this guy deserve to be like just completely, after he was told it was okay to be fired for the job he was doing, he just moved for? Why? That's not fair. That's not cool.
Right.
And so I think the problem was, I think I needed to learn how to balance out calling out both. The problems when they happen, but also the performative reactions to it that don't actually help. Because if you're not helping, then you're just making the problem worse. Yeah. And I think sometimes you kind of, when there's like a really polarizing subject, truth is the hardest thing to do is to take the line where it's like, I don't agree with what they said, but I don't know if it crossed any of the rules that we have, so I can't say I can ban them. It's hard. It's very hard because you have to listen to your customer base. And if your customer base, if these tournaments are looking at every CPT post where infiltration wins is like this deluge of how much they hate him and how much they want to ban all this stuff, they're going to feel the pressure, whether they admit it or not, to do something about it.
Yep. Yeah. And before the pressure was about the integrity of the tournament, but now the pressure is about, no, this is literally hurting your bottom line because you have all this negative vitriol in your comments, and that's turning people away.
So they feel the need to act, but it's like, you can't just act. It's not just about acting. It's going to cause ripple waves across the whole thing. So with infiltration, here's a perfect example. When he's banned because he goes against their code of conduct, and he's told only after he registers for the tournament, and he's not told why, what exact rule he broke. Yeah. What precedent have you set? You've just told this guy to go fuck himself, but like, you haven't told any of us, how does this actually apply to the rest of us? Yeah. We got to know, what do we have to not do to not have this happen to us?
Yeah.
We don't know. I don't know what he's banned. I don't know what he's banned for. I can make assumptions, but I don't actually know. So in that way, that doesn't help anybody. You haven't set a precedent. You haven't set, here's the line where you can go up to, because I don't know what the line is.
Yeah.
I don't know what the line is. And if you don't know, then it's not helpful as a rule. Rules have to set the boundary. And you have not set a boundary. You set an invisible line that you could pat your back on and say you did a good thing, but you haven't made it clear for the rest of us who just want to participate and not have any troubles. And if someone is, let's say someone who has kind of a rougher past, maybe is a little shady now and again, but they just, it was in the past. They don't want to talk about it anymore. Now it comes across that like, oh, there's a precedent that maybe, possibly, sort of, that could matter, but we don't know. We don't know.
That's the other thing, is that a lot of this comes at the height of cancel culture and how that impacts our world today outside of fighting games. Like, cancel culture is a global thing, right?
Well, yeah. So what it is it's a lack of faith in institutions to do something about a cultural issue. And so they take it to the internet. And the problem with that is it's not like that actually helps. Like, this sort of like, I think I had a friend one time put it as like a sort of it's rage that feels justified, but justified rage is the easiest to be wrong and the easiest to do the most harm. So it's
Oh.
like when you can justify what you say and what you do to somebody, that's the most dangerous because you're not going to feel bad about it afterwards.
That's when
Even
it becomes
though,
the holy war, right?
even though, yeah, you probably should. You should think about what you're doing and take it a little bit more seriously than barely a person, anyways. I don't care what that happens to them. And it's like, well, you kind of have to care a little bit because I
Yeah.
think to me, the reason people lose faith in the institutions and stuff is also because they get it wrong all the time, but because there's such a lack of human care in there that they don't feel that that actually speaks to them. You don't care about me. That's easy. The easiest thing in the world is to look at something and go, I mean, look at the Supreme Court. You don't care about me. You don't care about my rights, blah, blah, blah. It's easy to say that because look at how they've handled themselves. So when you have something where it's very clear they don't care about you or setting a precedent or trying to help people, it is about punishing the bad person. The punishment is the bad part. We always talk about how bad prisons are. We know they're bad. So
Yeah.
let's stop punishing other people. Like, let's stop hyper focusing on the punishment. Figure out how do we keep getting into these situations? How do we get ourselves out? How do we do the hard work, the very hard work that might take a really long time of changing how we operate and how we do things culturally to make sure that these things don't keep happening over and over and over again. There's a new controversy. Oh, someone did something, a lot of people knew about it, nobody said anything. And then it keeps happening. And then you're like, well, how did this happen again? How could it happen? We do the best thing. We say the right things. We ban people who are bad. We speak out for everybody. We retweet all the right stuff. But there's always going to be cracks because, like I said, the behavior doesn't change. It's just you're supporting one group, but you're not looking at it in a way that's really helpful for, like, I don't want to say governance, but like you're looking at a very wide communal group and you're deciding that just getting rid of one person is good enough. But it's like, first
It-
of all, it's if you're not actually doing the due diligence of looking into something and, like, okay, figuring out, okay, is this a problem where, like, this person did a bad thing and maybe they didn't realize it, and so they need to go away for a while to understand. And once they do, they'll take that time off. They'll come back. And if they do it again, they're gone for good. Or it's just scorched earth, number one, full on from the first day, and never come back and fuck you and all this. It's not good. It doesn't work. It doesn't work is the problem I have. Like, I'm always very interested in solutions. If
Yeah.
I'm doing a poke in neutral and it's -4 and I keep getting punished for it, I would be an idiot if I kept doing it. So, if that's the reason, the way I take it is like, it's a strategy that's not working, but
Yeah.
we seem to keep wanting to do it, and I don't know why.
To my guess at that is that it's the corporate mindset. It doesn't have to be the right answer. It just has to be the answer that gets me the quickest amount of return. And
Yes,
so when you have a lynch mob on the internet that's going after everybody, going after people, and then they're already heated about the wide variety of issues that are throughout the rest of the world. Like, the quickest thing is to put gasoline on the fire and then point it somewhere else, because then it'll travel somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. You want to get all the attention off of you,
right?
And say, this is what, like, so I don't know if corporate is the right mindset to say. I would say it's the transactional nature of how most people have relationships, where it is only so good as, what do you agree with me with? And if you don't, I don't want to know you anymore. So it's like you get the feeling, the transactional part of it is like, you have to give me this feeling or else you're no good to me anymore.
And going back to that justified rage thing, though, the way you justify that transactional thing is when you're in the corporate environment. And
well,
you're
yeah,
like, this is my job. I'm just doing it,
That's like the worst part of it, right? So like the Evo thing. The Evo thing is truly, that is a corporation that runs it, made a financial decision to invest in this stupid product that helps nobody, will be of no use, will be gone within a year or two, and we all know it. And the problem is, anybody that we like, they can't do anything about it.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that more specifically, so our viewers can kind of go through it? Yeah.
So when I was at Evo, I noticed that I saw the Fresh Cut logo everywhere. Now, I knew of Fresh Cut because during the pandemic years, when Evo was just an online tournament, they had partnered with this group, and I want to say it was called MetaView at the time, and it was solely just an app where you could get clips of.
Oh, okay, yeah, I heard of that.
games.
Yeah, I didn't know what that was.
Yeah. So you could get clips of games, of specifically video games, And it was the short clips, just like YouTube Shorts or TikTok or something like that.
Yeah, TikTok.
And the reason I didn't think it was very good because I'm like, well, people can just find those clips on TikTok or Twitch or something. They don't have to, they don't have to put it in it. So I didn't understand the point of the app to begin with.
Yeah.
But I remembered in the back of my mind, I remembered that they had pivoted. They changed their name. They pivoted to being what's called a Web3 product or company. Now you'll hear Web3 a lot. Now it's a lot of hokum, but to be clear, what it is it's a way of some people, some very wealthy people in Silicon Valley decided that we have been in a structure of webs that goes in threes. Web 1, the unmitigated web of the early 90s, right? Message boards, all this stuff. Web 2, social media invasions. We have Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, all this stuff. Now we're in Web 3. What is Web 3? I'm using this finger specifically for a reason. What is Web 3? Well, it's a way that you, the user, can take back you that the Web 2 companies have stolen from you for all the time that you put on their website. All that time you use engaging, learning, meeting new people, they take the value from it. So we're going to give the value back to you. Now, what did I just say?
That was
I didn't say anything.
That was a pitch.
I didn't say anything. That's exactly right. So they keep saying we're going to give you value back to the user. So the idea is that the social media programs, you spend all your time on them, like Twitch and YouTube, especially as if you're a streamer, and you get like a pittance in return, which I don't disagree with in a sense. It's an agreeable thing to go by. Like you're like, yeah, I am not rewarded for all the time I spend shit posting on this website. That's true. And you know what? Twitch and YouTube are unfair in how long it takes to become an affiliate streamer and how long it takes to get like actual money from it. True, compared to the time in. The problem is not that you then have to find out a way, okay, how do we monetize just using this? Like, how could your average YouTube person who views videos constantly, how could they monetize this? So then they go, oh, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up a decentralized autonomous community. And what that means is you're now a community that votes on what the website does in the future. And the way you have voting power is through a coin, cryptocurrency of some kind, that the more you have, the more power you have. Somehow this is more democratic. I don't know what democracy they've been studying, but somehow it's more democratic. I don't understand. So the problem then becomes like, okay, so who in their right mind, like, okay, so cryptocurrency is a lot like stocks, right? It's like securities trading. How many people in your life do you know that do securities trading and like do it very seriously, study the ins and outs? You probably know like 2 or 3 people, even as an adult. So imagine who wants to do that for like everyday things like watching a video, watching a 5-second video, playing a video game. Who wants to enter into a complicated financial transaction with a really strict risk-reward calculus as to what you're going to get back? That's something that exists in like the coke-fueled minds of like Patrick Bateman in the 80s. That doesn't exist to anybody that I know. It doesn't speak to these people, but somehow, you know, when you have a lot of money, you can convince people that it makes sense. So what FreshCut is now is an app where it's the same kind of, in my opinion, pointless short clip gathering thing that pretty much relies on you having a YouTube or Twitch account that's kind of popular to begin with. Then what you do is for liking things and for creators for sharing content, they get this coin called FCD coin. And the more they have of it, obviously the less of it is on the market, that's the better. Obviously, scarcity drives what it's worth.
Value,
And
yeah.
cryptocurrency can only be valuable when it's scarce. The reason why it's scarce is because there was 1 billion coins minted. Half of that was given to early investors.
Yep. That's how they made their money, right?
Which is segued several ways away from the development of the app through the Cayman Islands. I break it down in my article, but basically FreshCut as you know it is actually like 5 or 6 shell companies, where one is in the United States and actually makes the app. The others are all in the Cayman Islands, the British Virgin Islands, where there is no taxes, no tax laws. You can't get in trouble for trading what is basically an unregistered security because you're not in the United States. And then the coin is all like half of it is in the safely given to private investors like Endeavor, who owns Evo through their company RTS. RTS is a shell company of Endeavor. So Endeavor owns that. And then they own a big stake in this FreshCut thing where they're promised a certain amount of coins after like a year or two. And so the whole thing exists just to get the value of the coin up. So the investors can make their money back on the investment by selling all the coin they get in like a year or two.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter that the app is bad or that it has no point or that it is buggy and it doesn't seem to work very well.
It's
That's not
literally
really
just about driving the currency.
that's really not the point. The point is the currency.
Yeah.
And the problem is it plays into like very basic gambling practices. Like if you're on there, you want to maximize, you want to min max how to get the most coin because the coin's going to be valuable. So you've got, and if you're a streamer and you're trying to make ends meet, the whole point, the whole pitch of it is like you can make more money than you would with Twitch or YouTube. So you're going to game the system as much as possible, right? To get as much coin. So it feeds into like the worst of like gambling. And then it asks you to play the stock market. It's so fraudulent. It's so blatantly unfair.
This is something that happens with NFTs as a whole.
NFTs are the exact same thing, right?
Yeah,
yes. NFTs are in the crypto. It's like the crypto umbrella, and NFTs are right underneath it.
Right, where what they'll do is they'll take they'll mint the tokens, right, and then they will deliberately sell them at higher prices to their buddies, and then drive the price up.
Right, that's what happened.
Right,
the first big NFT was what Beeple or whatever, which was like digital art.
Yeah.
That guy talked it up and sold it for like $6 million or whatever.
Yeah.
He just said that, like, oh, it's worth $6 million, and then someone bought it.
Yep. And so now it is because someone bought it. That's the value of it.
Yeah. So the whole thing is now also because there's no regulation, these things get completely overboarded. Like OpenSea or whatever, where the NFTs can go, it's absolutely flooded with NFTs. The market gets so saturated with this stuff because there is no like accounting for taste or accounting for if it's legitimate or not. It's just we need as many people possible. Then the other problem is it's all based on Ethereum. The Ethereum cryptocurrency, the problem is the way it works is the fees for actually getting Ethereum go up when so many people are using it.
Yeah.
So you're not just paying the Ethereum price, you're paying the gas fees. Basically, that's what they're called, that go with it. So it's like hundreds of dollars sometimes just to make the transaction to begin with.
Yep.
So I always tell people in the article I said, we have the SEC for a reason. The same thing happened in the 1920s, but with actual stocks, and people lost a lot of houses. And we had this whole thing called the Great Depression. I don't know if you heard about that. And it was based on people selling securities by buying them on credit and doing what are called Ponzi schemes, which is where people on the top make money, and they make money by having people on the lower end invest in it. And that is exactly what cryptocurrency has become, despite, the lofty things people want it to be. They want it to be an alternative currency. They want it to be escape from like bank control and all this stuff. But the problem is when you don't have any regulations, all it stays are the thieves. That's what we have.
I can speak from a tech background too, is that throughout the decades that I've been in the field, apps, like startup companies early on were all about making apps. And
yes,
what you did is you started with some big idea that was aped from one of the big guys like Google or Facebook. So everyone said, I have an app, and then the next big idea is going to be it's going to be like Facebook but for X. And what you do is you take that big slice and you narrow it down and you make it a more narrow audience. Justin TV did that. Justin TV was like, we're going to take our big audience and we're going to say we're going to be the streamers, but we're going to get killed by YouTube. So we're going to go and we're going to focus on gaming. And that's what they did. And so a lot of times people are like, let's take social media experience and then let's make it for Christian people, for cats, for gamers.
Yeah.
And then now it's the model has turned into, all right, well, we can't actually sustain. We're gonna take that social media and then we're gonna sell ads and we're gonna do all that model, right? We're like, if the product is free, then you are the product. That's what a mentor of mine always told me. So LinkedIn's like that's all the social media stuffs. And then now it's like, okay, well, we can take that and turn that into a smokescreen for I'm going to drive a currency up in the background.
Of course, 100%. So the problem then becomes, like you just said, the idea used to be you make a product make something that somebody wants. That used to be after the .com bubble burst. That was the thing, right? So the problem then became you had things like Uber and like WeWork, which they don't make money. It's something people want. It's just they don't know how to make money off of it. It only exists because of the stock market, right? So then it was like, now the new thing is make something that like 3 people want, but make it so that everybody might seem like they want it.
Yep.
It's in no way like a natural growth of, oh, we moved on from social media to now you make money off social media. But it's like the make money part is just basic user engagement with it.
It just turned back into a cyclical thing where they went back to going to Ponzi schemes and pyramid schemes, which is
really
like let's have our faux intellectual conversation about what value is and talk about gold again, right?
Yeah, well, it's like being on the gold standard, and it's like, well, we abandoned the gold standard for a reason. Do you have a counter argument to that? And they're like, yeah, inflation is bad. It's like, well, yeah, okay, great. That's a good, fine, but do you have an answer? I'm asking you, do you have an answer to that? And I think I notified in the blog too, like the problem with cryptocurrency is it comes from a very, very heavily ideologue background. And people who are ideologues don't always have the greatest ideas for like a mass culture. They have like the greatest ideas for like their small circle of ideologues. So that's why Bitcoin doesn't work when, say, it's in El Salvador and it's one of the main currencies, and it crashes the economy, because it's not meant to scale up. It's not meant to go for scale. But somehow Silicon Valley has convinced itself that the next big thing is to scale it up to the size of Twitter or Facebook, and it's obviously not going to work. And with the FGC specifically, we saw the only one we had before was the esports ecosystem, which was Lapchi from Canada Cup. He did that, and it was very obviously a scam to make money for him. And he got a bunch of people to push it, and he changed Canada Cup to be at part of a convention center, and it was terrible, and everybody hated it. And then all of a sudden, the coin doesn't exist a year later because, oh, look, well, we made all money we could, and we're going to pull out now. It's like, yeah, of course. This is the exact same thing, except now it's like, let's have a thing that's even more obscure that it's about crypto. Because like I said, a lot of people look at that ad, and I don't think they understand it's for like a cryptocurrency.
No, not at
that's
all.
such a big
they
part
don't
of
know
it.
that.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you could technically use the app, but you don't have to engage with the crypto part. But the crypto part is what makes it work.
Right.
So
that's the part. That's the part that's driving them. Like that's driving development.
The value.
Basically. Yeah. Driving value. Yeah. My corporate. Yeah. That's the other thing is like my corporate background is giving me
what's
some
the
PTSD
value
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, well, the value is nothing. The value is in what you make it, because your currency has no value other than what like if Bitcoin crashes tomorrow, which it could.
Yeah.
Your coin's not going to have much value much longer. I'm telling you that much.
Yeah. Basically what drove it up the first time was, hey, some ransomware happened and took a hospital hostage, and suddenly Bitcoin is a thing, right?
Yeah. And then or the stable coin that because you don't buy FCD, like when you buy it on an exchange, you don't buy it with money. You exchange your money for a stable coin like Tether or whatever, and then you buy cryptocurrency. But when those stable coins go below $1, or when they ask you, hey, what's backing all that stable coin you've got out there? And they're like, well, I mean, look, man, it's a secret. And if we give it away, everyone's going to find out. That doesn't give it a lot of confidence that there's anything there, right? So it's like,
no, but that's a Silicon Valley angel investor pitch.
100%. And that's how it works, right? Yeah. That's exactly how it's an angel investor, which is what Endeavor angel investor to this product.
Yep.
So it's like they have
to the layman, it would be like, when you want to, like, hey, this organization's giving away free Disneyland tickets if you go and listen to a pitch for a timeshare. It's like
exactly.
that.
Timeshare. Yeah.
Yeah, you're listening to the time. How can you make this timeshare work for you?
Yeah. How do you get what's the value to you?
So
what is
real quick.
Pen worth? Yeah.
I didn't expect to go on a tirade about NFTs, and I apologize to our viewers if I offended anyone. But I will say,
very much on the mind. Yeah.
In our last 10 minutes here, I do want to ask you a little bit about the announcements that have happened in the past couple of days. So specifically, Tekken 8 and Street Fighter 6 have made some big announcements. Tekken 8 being that it exists, even.
It exists. Finally. Proof.
I was curious about your reactions to that, and yours as well, Benny.
Right. Well, so I was live at EVO when they announced Tekken 8. And I say announced, I mean, if you were in the audience, you could hear the audience deflate.
Yep.
There was no announcement.
Yeah, we were all sad. Yep.
Yeah. So my honest thought is, because Sony, also owns EVO. My guess is they said, we're going to be doing a showcase in a month or so. Can you hold off? It's Japanese developer focus for PS5 exclusives. Can you hold off? And they were probably like, yeah, sure. So they just wanted to show a little teaser, and I understand that, but it was a little deflating. Now, having said that, seeing the trailer, hey, it looks great.
Yeah.
Obviously redone from the ground up. No more of the Tekken 7 engine, which is the Tekken 5 fucking engine. And it looks like they're trying to keep it pretty close to what it was before. And maybe Harada won't lie about the rollback this time, and maybe it'll actually have rollbacks. I'd be excited for that. I like Tekken. I like Tekken a lot. I was last tournament I entered at a local was for Tekken 7. So I like Tekken, and I very much would like a new game to play. Tekken 7's pretty old now. It's about 8 years old or whatever. So
Yeah.
ironically, Tekken 8, And then of course Street Fighter 6. I think it looks great. I actually played it when I was at Evo.
Yeah.
It's definitely a very chunky game, and
Yep.
you can feel one of the things I was critiqued about Street Fighter 4 was I hated the way like the jabs sounded. It
Yep.
just
I know
sounds
what you're
so
talking
like
about.
lame.
And you heard them a
But
lot.
yeah, Street Fighter 6, they're super chunky, and because there's no priority system anymore, you're trading all the time. And the trades actually, you notice it in the game. They're so chunky, right? So it's like there is that feel of like there's weight to it. I think a lot of the ideas are really solid. Obviously, I like MK11, so I like the idea of a meter that constantly refills over time and starts full. I think
Yeah.
that's a great idea. I like the idea of a super meter just being there to be a super meter. The parry thing I think looks pretty cool. I like a lot of the ideas. I think the design, obviously, this is unlike Street Fighter 5 where it was like I don't
Kind
know
of
what the design
milquetoast.
the visual design philosophy wasn't really like anything special.
Yeah.
This one, every main character's got a new costume. We're not going back to the same costume as before. The style of it is very, very set in stone and unique, and they're definitely got a vibe they're going for. So I love it. I think Street Fighter 6 looks really impressive with all the World Warrior characters, even though I'm sick of seeing them now, just like everybody else. They still have something to do, something cool to look like. So I'm all for it. I love the Street Fighter 6 announcement today.
Nice. Benny, how are you feeling about those two announcements?
Tekken, I'm kind of like, I mean, I thought the trailer looked really good. I've played Tekken here and there pretty much from the beginning, and I'm really kind of interested to see if they're gonna do like really kind of change how it plays. I think we were kind of talking about that briefly in terms of like legacy, but I mean, I don't see it happening. I would love for them
No,
to kind
sir.
of do something different because, like, honestly, like, the same things that I was doing in Tekken, whatever, 1 and 2, like, a lot of those same things are still, I can still do them now, right? Obviously, frame data, other properties might have changed since then, but like, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's kind of a weird argument because, like, I guess you could say the same thing about any kind of fighting game, right? Like, you can still throw fireballs, but it's just like, I think yeah, I mean, we talked about that too in terms of like Street Fighter. Like every Street Fighter game is different, right? To
Yeah.
me, like every Tekken game that I've played, like they pretty much all feel the same, other than like the tag games, right?
Okay.
That's my personal opinion. But that's just me. That's just, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's kind of why my interest in Tekken kind of wanes all the time. Is like, I get the initial kind of joy from like, oh, this is new. What can I do? And it's just like, oh, I'm kind of doing the same things as I was doing before. So I don't really doesn't really resonate with me.
Yeah,
Street
I
Fighter
got you.
6, on the other hand, like yeah, the change with the universal mechanics, the drive system, all that stuff. I'm kind of excited to see how that's going to be. For me, the news today kind of came out of nowhere. Like I just was looking at Twitter, and I think it was Nam that was like saying something about the information from Capcom today. Might have saved them, or makes up for a lot of stuff in the past. And then I started, of course, I went to go look for it, and I was like, holy shit, freaking Honda and Sim. Those are my
Yeah.
my mains from 4 and
This is your
5.
announcement today,
Yeah,
man.
this is
And I
yeah.
was just like, this is what I've been
Enjoy it.
looking for, right? Like, the leaks, the leak roster was out there, but still, I'm looking forward to seeing how the reveals are and the characters and their moves and stuff. And to be honest, like for me, Honda was a little underwhelming. Like, I don't know, I think his face looks kind of weird. And then his moveset is kind of like, it's okay. Sim, on the other hand, like when 5 came out and the beta came out, or I mean, when they revealed Sim in 5, like I didn't know who I was going to play, right? And then when they revealed him in 5, like his look, his everything that he did, I was just like, I was super hyped, and I was like, this is the guy I'm going to play. And a lot of like, I think it was you, Scott, everybody else was kind of like, really, you're going to play Sim?
Yep.
And in a way, it
I'm
worked
still
out.
like that, man.
I had a ton of fun playing him, and then
Yeah.
like I kind of have the same feeling when I saw the trailer, when I saw his reveal for 6, because like, it's a lot of the same stuff that I saw in 5 in terms of like, the typical teleport mix-ups, but then like he's got like that downward fireball now. Then you saw like the full screen stand roundhouse, and then the was it the drive rush? I think is what it's called. The like the cancel where he like was able to go in, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, yo, I was just like, yeah, this is gonna be fun. So I'm pretty hyped for Sim. Honda, I'm still gonna give an honest chance just because he's gonna be there from launch. But yeah, Sim for sure. Like, yeah, I'm pretty hyped for that.
You know what, Benny? I think that you have grown as a fighting game player and you have realized that Honda is boring. What we've all knew from the get-go, that Honda is boring.
Well, I mean, I guess that's fair because Honda is like that was one of the things I think Zayn even said when it came to like in our little group chat in terms of like I'm going to take the Benny method and try to learn a simpler character because that's always kind of been my thing, right? It's like I want to play somebody simple, give me high HP, high health. Let me make let me make a little bit more mistakes, and
Hey,
and
I play a
that
whole
way.
genre. I play NRS games because they're simple and easy to use. I'm not judging. I think that's great.
Whereas, like Sim is a much more complicated character for a lot of people. Like, and like, the basic meta is not the same, right? You don't have the normal jumps, right? You have the floatiest jump in the whole game. Like, people don't want naturally play that kind of character. So, I mean, I guess maybe it speaks to my growth as a player. Like me and Scott were kind of having this discussion the other day, and I think honestly, I think I'm a little bit more spoiled after playing Sim because like my normals go full screen and I can pester people, and like I couldn't do that before. Like I had to kind of had that grappler mentality where I had to like fight my way in, whereas now I could just be like, I'm going to stand over here and I'm going to kick you, and what are you going to do about it to get in? Right?
It's completely opposite.
Exactly. Yeah. So like it kind of opened my eyes to just, I mean, like I said, maybe I think I'm just spoiled now from playing Sim. So I think that's maybe why I gravitate towards him. That, and he's always been a very polarizing character in terms of people. Like the people that play him love him, and then the people that have to play against him, they just absolutely hate him.
Yeah, I certainly do.
Sim to me looks like he looks annoying to me already for that reason. It's the same polarizing thing. Blanca and Honda in particular, I was really surprised at how they did them in the realistic style because they're monsters in a lot of ways. Now Honda's not really a monster, but Blanca.
I mean, Honda has an 8-pack and he's like he's a monster.
He defies human anatomy.
Yeah, he definitely does.
But the big thing is like the create a character mode that they announced too. It's just ripped from Monster Hunter Rise because it's all in the it's all in the RE engine, right? So the character, like the actual menus and the different choices and stuff, like that's all from just RE engine Monster Hunter Rise. So what it feels like is that for Street Fighter V, it was a small team that got their shit kicked in because of how poorly it was received, and then Capcom was like, "Here's some money. Take what you learned on Street Fighter V and make a good fighting ground game." And they made the fighting ground section, which is the stuff we like, the versus mode, the rank match, casual match, training mode, stuff like that. And then they said, and we're going to drop the Monster Hunter team on top of you, and they're going to swarm around you and build that World Tour mode. And if you look at it, the screenshots, it looks like when for Monster Hunter Rise, they had Akuma as a guest character, and they just took the model from Street Fighter V and dropped it on the model on.
I think Sakura too, right?
And Sakura too, and they look terrible. And Ryu too.
Yeah,
not Ryu, or maybe Ryu. I don't remember, but they look terrible.
Right.
But it was Street Fighter characters guest starring in Monster Hunter. This feels like that, where the Monster Hunter characters, they look like Monster Hunter characters, but they're creative fighters, but they're in Street Fighter, and it's weird looking.
It's definitely wacky, but I think clearly they put a lot of thought into it. Like it doesn't seem like it is just a copy paste job. Like they really did think about how you do a Street Fighter universe Monster Hunter game, and Monster Hunter is a very popular game. It makes total sense in a marketing sense to let's get something from a more popular game. And if our games have always had kind of a weak single player offering, let's come up with something like this. People like that when we did Alpha 3 World Tour and stuff like that. People love that.
Yeah.
And so, it makes total sense to me.
There's the ideas angle, but then there's also the implementation angle where it's like, we can also just reuse this stuff. It was already built. And so we got to retrofit it and stuff. But by and large, it seems mostly intact because it looks so much like the camera angle looks like a Monster Hunter game.
Yeah. When they showed a close up of like what the faces look like, they're very realistically done. I'm like, that looks like from another game entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my biggest worry, because you linked me the PlayStation blog, and I noticed something in the terms of like the costumes. It said different gear affects your strength and stats, and like I know in Tekken, I'm pretty sure like Tekken 7, it doesn't do that at all. It's just strictly cosmetic, right? Like whatever stuff you add to your characters.
Yeah.
So when I read the different strength and stats, it makes me think back to Soul Calibur. I think I don't know which one it was.
Yeah,
because they did that. Was it 2 where they like let you use like
Soul
costume
Calibur,
stuff?
Soul Calibur 2 through 4 had a lot of that customization stuff.
Yeah.
To me, Injustice 2 has like the gear where you could use that in a different mode, a gear only mode where you could use gear and
Yeah.
you'd have a bunch of wacky stat increases and stuff like that. So yeah, I've seen stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think that's my biggest worry because like I remember playing Soul Calibur 2 online and just seeing like the weirdest kind of costume designs because it's like people had like these like hairy like leggings and like arms and then they combined it with something else and it was literally just for stat buildup. So it's just like because I remember like not even noticing it until like somebody had 200% health, right? Like I'd get rid of the life bar, I thought I won, and then I was like, I see another life bar, and I was just like, hold on, why does he have 200% health? And it's like, oh, because he's got all this stupid stuff on. So
luckily nowadays they will separate it out. Like I know in MK11, ranked is only you can only do ranked can only have regular stuff. Like you can't do the wackiness, you know.
What I want to see, because now we're at the point where if those items augment the character, change the character in a certain way, and in Street Fighter 6 they announced that you learn Shoryuken or spinning bird kick or Hadoken from different characters. I want to see a roguelike, like a deck builder roguelike.
That'd be great.
Where like you have a build now where it's like, okay, I'm gonna take Dragon Punch and Fireball, and I'm gonna run through 5 or 6 levels and see how that fares, and then after that I'm gonna swap out my Fireball for a Boom instead. And then I finish the run, and then I'm gonna start over, and I'm gonna try a completely different character with an SPD, and like it's so like it's fun for the creative lab monsters that want to try new shit, but it's also good for new fighting game players that are like, I want to try a different archetype because it's a run as opposed to I'm picking this character for life, you know.
And you saw in the trailer there looked like a part of it that looked more like Final Fight, where it was like a side-scrolling kind of view.
Yeah.
And I wonder if like that's exactly right. Like you could do something like a mini Final Fight, maybe like 6-7 levels or whatever, and you run through it with like your build or whatever, and you could swap it. Maybe you meet Ryu halfway through or whatever, and he can teach you new moves or whatever.
Yeah.
And just keep doing it like that. I could see that being very addictive for a lot of people.
I don't know if they're gonna do that, but like
the
concept of like learning moves and then incorporating them into your character as a custom character, like that, it lends itself to the concept of a build, and that opens up all these different things for content creation, for the community to experiment with, for videos, stuff like that.
Look at like Elden Ring, right? Elden Ring, you know, the brilliantness of Dark Souls, it's like a roguelike, but it's also like your average action game. So it's like you kind of get a mix of both people who love it. And so, that's definitely multi-genre mixing is like the key to the game, right? Without ever knowing it. So maybe they do something like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I could definitely see them doing something like that at this point. Like, I mean, with the amount of content that they're putting out there, like, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that. So, I mean,
in the future, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, like we didn't even talk about the beta. They announced the beta.
Yeah, I already signed up for it.
October. That's next month, dude. Yeah. Like, maybe this game's coming out. It probably won't come out this year, but I bet it'll come out early.
I'm thinking early next year. I'm thinking February, March.
Yeah, that was always my thought. Yeah.
Coming out soon. I mean, it definitely looks ready. Like it doesn't look like they're, you know, we're still kicking around the concept a little bit. Like, no, it looks like they're ready to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is all marketing at this point.
Oh yeah, of course. And I mean, MK11 took that route, right? Like it got announced and then in December, and then I think already it was ready to roll by like maybe early the next year. Like they got it rolling really quickly, and they just wanted to market it all like, slow reveals of stuff we already have put together and everything like that. So yeah, I think that's great. The future of fighting games looks really bright. I mean, I said that in my Evo blog because I was emo about the event, but the truth is, you know, we won the rollback war.
We did.
And any game that comes out without it is just now everyone knows it's a loser.
Yep.
And so everyone wants it, and then all the games look great. So you have like KOF 15 just came out. They announced a new Garu, Mark of the Wolves coming out.
Yep.
Tekken 8, Street Fighter 6, Guilty Gear Strive is doing incredible numbers for what it was. Yeah. So the future is extremely bright.
Even legacy games are having resurgences.
Cyber Showdown is getting rollback. You know, Dragon Ball FighterZ is getting rollback.
Yeah, rollback. Yep.
On next gen and PC, but it's getting rollback. You know, so it's like it's great.
Well, the future is bright, and I'm excited to talk to you about the future someday. But unfortunately, I think we got to call it here for the day.
We have gone pretty long. Yeah.
We have gone long, but before we head out here, do you have anything you'd like to promote, KingHippo?
You can just go to my my website, which is my blog. It is themsfightingwordsblog.wordpress.com. Pay my $49 a year, whatever, to own that URL. So I'm going to use it. And that is where I blog. And I usually post on Twitter. So my Twitter is at KingHippo42. And anytime I have an update to the blog, it automatically tweets the article out. So you can follow me there for updates. I don't tweet as often as I used to because, again, it's all part of the process of learning how to wean yourself out of bad habits, but still get on there every now and again to talk about things. But yeah, I mean, that's really all I got. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. It seems to be picking up. A lot of stuff seems to be kicking into high gear. And, I've been working with them with that Blasted Salami on YouTube. We made a YouTube video not too long ago. Turned out really good. I've just been sidetracked with doing other stuff, but I'd like to keep doing that too. So hopefully that picks up. But yeah, like I said, looks really good. Everything looks, I'm excited for what's to come pretty soon.
Me too, man. I think you're going to be our own investigative journalist in the FGC. So,
well, cool. I think a lot of people take up that mantle, but the problem is it's like you get in your head too much about it, and like you really feel like you have to answer to a lot of people. And it's like you just got to be true to yourself. What feels right to you. Don't put labels on it. Just do what you do, and yeah, people like it. And if people like it, they'll keep reading. And yeah, I think it'll work out great.
Yeah, cool, man. I just want to say thank you. Thanks again for joining us and taking the time. For everybody that's tuning in, we'll be live again next Thursday. Our guest next week is going to be Ninja Nam, Marvel player, commentator. He's been around various events, CEO. I want to say Combo Breaker, some other events where he's been at. But yeah, we're going to talk to Nam next week. And as always, when we go live, you can find us at twitch.tv/Spiral Series. You can find the VOD at youtube.com/Spiral Series. And then when it gets posted on the podcast, you can look at those on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify under Absolute Guard.
Nice.
Thanks again, Tanner. Good to see you again, John.
No problem.
Thanks, everybody, for listening.
All right.
See you guys.
See you later. Bye.